My entitled toxic ex cheats on me and then breaks up with me, saying that he only broke up with me after how angry I was when I found out he cheated on me. So I got some revenge by exposing exactly what he did to all of his coworkers and pretty much anybody on my Instagram. And now his job's on the line, as there's a good chance he's going to be replaced in the band that he plays in professionally. And at this point, I really don't know if I made a mistake or if I'm in the right. Here's how it all went down. Okay, to make a long story short, I'm a 27-year-old female and I met a musician who's 38 years old that's very well known in this city's music scene. And while we both perform, he's the one who does it full time. I've only been in the music scene for like a year and a half, and Quinn, not his real name, has been a working musician for almost a decade. We met at a jam and hit it off immediately. And although we started off as just friends, we started dating months into our friendship. At this point, my feelings are so strong, and I love him and he says he loves me, but we've had a bit of a turbulent friendship and got worse into the relationship. He struggled with taking criticism and often denied what I was talking to him about, leaving me still hurt and feeling crazy, and I progressively got more angry the more this happened. I eventually find out that he had cheated and lied about breaking up with his girlfriend, and he was also seeing another woman, with Quinn also admitting to me that he had not been using protection. I then ended up getting really angry, and he breaks up with me because of my anger. So I get even more angry and I cuss him out via text messaging, like I didn't do anything crazy. Even after I cuss Quinn out when he broke up with me, he says he still wants me in his life. I then question him as to why, since he says I'm too angry for him to handle, and then he gets mad at me, but he says that he still wants to talk once he's cooled off. I end up posting what happened on my Instagram, which I only have about 300 followers for, and a lot of his friends and people he's worked with see it. Since I'm pretty traumatized by the whole experience, I decide to not attend a concert that he was playing on. The band leader of that gig reaches out to me since someone sent him my story and listens to what happened in way more detail than this post and lets me know that there will be someone replacing him. Well, Quinn, my now ex, is no longer speaking to me, which is a good thing, but now I'm thinking I overreacted and I shouldn't have affected his work life. So am I the jerk for exposing my ex to his coworkers? Because right now I kind of feel bad. No, you're definitely not in the wrong here. Your ex-boyfriend literally cheated on you. He lied about breaking up with his other girlfriend, he's seeing another woman, he didn't use protection when you guys were together. Like, this guy's insane. And what he's doing is completely uncalled for. Like, I don't care who he is. And I guarantee you, the only reason he even wants to stay on good terms to some extent is because he doesn't want you talking bad about him behind his back. He doesn't want the world to know that he's a cheater, and if he keeps you quiet, then all that stays under wraps. He can still try to make you happy while also protecting his stupid career. So in my opinion, I think what he did absolutely should have been broadcast to the universe, dude. Like, seriously, this guy cheated on you. He's a piece of garbage. Because seriously, actions absolutely have consequences. And if there's some kind of fallout because of his behavior, then that's on him and not you. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My mom constantly feels entitled to my money, as she has literally one of the worst money management skills I've ever seen in my entire life. Here's what's going on. Okay, so as the title suggests, this is not just my money that my mom feels entitled to. This is literally everybody's money. She has a victim mentality that she was dealt a horrible hand, and so now it's everyone's job to try and fix it for her. For example, if I go on any vacations with my husband, she's upset I didn't invite her, and then just gives me the silent treatment. Or she keeps hinting or joking by saying, "Oh, it's been so long since I've been on a trip." Also, anytime she needs to take a trip to visit someone, she calls all of her siblings to talk about how much she wants to visit such and such but just can't afford it. The sibling then feels bad and then offers to pay for her tickets. She even accepted plane tickets from her own niece a few times. She's also asked me if I could send money behind her husband's back, and when I said no, she flipped out and stopped talking to me for months at a time. It's also important to note that she quit her job and stayed unemployed for 3 years, even though she has no savings. The whole 3 years, she complained about not being able to afford new clothing and will always beg for money, and yet she spent hundreds of dollars on meals to impress her friends. She also lost her home due to foreclosure and expected her siblings to pick up the pieces, which they did, and one wealthy sibling gave her a loan for another down payment. She's only been living in this new house for 2 years, and now she wants to move, and that basically means she would lose money on the sale. And trust me, there is so much more I could share about my mom, because the way she acts about money is honestly so exhausting. Oh yeah, that really does sound exhausting. I feel really bad for the original poster. Imagine having a parent who's not self-sufficient and literally doesn't do what she needs to do to take care of herself. She's not keeping a job for years at a time, she's got no savings, and instead she goes from person to person to be like, "Oh, I want to take a trip so bad." Or she'll beg and plead and be like, "I don't have a home to live in." Which of course course, goes right up until that one wealthy sibling steps in and says, "I'll pay for it." Like, seriously, that is so unfair and just completely crooked in my opinion. And I know for a fact I would hate having to deal with that if that was my mom. My parents are demanding that I give over my location via my cell phone anytime I'm out at night. But despite the fact that I'm 29 years old and I simply don't want to do that, they refuse to take no for an answer, leaving me in a situation where I truly don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. I'm a 29-year-old female and I still live with my parents for now while I work full time. I take some pretty hard classes, and I'm trying to save money because I'm trying to get into a really competitive master's program. I pay for all my own stuff, and honestly, I could move in with either of my brothers if I wanted to, but I'm staying here just to save money. Well, the problem is that my parents have always been strict. They want to know exactly where I'm going, who I'm with, when I'll be home, etc. They comment on my friends, my work, basically everything. And if I don't share something, my mom will push for it. I've told her personal stuff before, and then she's thrown it back in my face when she's mad. So I've learned to keep certain things to myself. They also love to lecture me about how I could be doing more or growing in the way they think I should. We just had a therapy session together, and the therapist asked how I'd feel about sharing my phone location at night. Well, I already have a 2 o'clock in the morning curfew, because as they say, this is their house, meaning that I have to follow their rules. Not long ago, my mom was giving me this list of rules in the house, namely the curfew, helping out, be happy, don't have an attitude, make them happy, etc. And I recorded her just to show my therapist. Well, she caught me, got super mad, and made me delete it in front of her. Then my dad found out and demanded I bring my phone to him right then and there. But I just said no, and then he yelled it again louder. They've even argued with me about little stuff. One time we were traveling, and I asked to sit in the front seat because I was car sick in the back. My mom likes the front to control the driver and just let out a sigh, to which my dad said I should be more accommodating. Well, I said fine, but the next time I won't go or I'll just drive myself. And my brothers have also said they feel the same way about how our parents are. But honestly, I don't want to share my location with them when I go out. I would rather just text them, but I know they'll think I'm being disrespectful or hiding something. They also make comments if I go places they don't approve of. And right now, I'm honestly worried that if I agree to do this, I will regret it. So would I be the jerk if I said no? Because at this point, I really don't know what to do. Okay, you said it yourself in the beginning. You could move in with your brothers, but you don't because you want to save money. But in my opinion, I think you should move in with your brothers. Not just for the whole money part, but honestly to like save your sanity. Your parents are treating you like some kind of unruly child. You're 29 years old. Your parents have no business knowing your exact location. And that's really weird in my opinion. Like, you're a grown woman, and yet they're acting like you're 17 years old and you're trying to sneak out of the house. So I don't know, man. I don't think there's ever going to be any changes from your parents, and I think the only way there will be a change is if you change your scenery and just move somewhere else, because these people just love having some kind of control over you, and you could do way better than this. Am I overreacting by getting annoyed for being asked to accommodate a stranger's ridiculous trigger in public? Because right now I am seriously confused and I don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, I have to share this experience because it was honestly so weird. Okay, so me and my boyfriend were walking out of a public library today. We were walking beside one another, not holding hands or anything, and not drawing attention to ourselves. A random woman then walks up to me and stands really close to my face and practically whispers to me that she has a client near us that gets triggered when she sees males and females walking together. She then requests that me and my boyfriend stop walking together around her client so that she doesn't get triggered. Mind you, we don't even know where their client is, and we're just minding our own business. We're right next to the exit, so I tell the woman, who I assume is a disability support worker, that we are about to leave anyways. But she insists that me and my boyfriend distance ourselves from each other. Well, both of us are so confused that we just leave the building with him walking behind me. So am I overreacting for feeling annoyed after this encounter? I feel like this is such a ridiculous and intrusive request. I mean, I believe the word trigger has just lost all meaning. How can you be triggered by two people of the opposite sex walking together? And why would you request members of the public in a public facility to accommodate your unrealistic needs? Surely I'm not overreacting here. I mean, we are genuinely baffled by this encounter. Has anyone ever encountered something like this before? Because right now I don't know what to do. Okay, dude, there is no way I would ever take that seriously. Like, if that was me, I would be like, absolutely not. Your triggers are your responsibility and not mine. And who is this lady to get in your face and be like, you guys gotta stop walking together. My client doesn't like this. It's like, I don't care what your client likes. They can look the other way. Why should I have to change my entire life for someone who clearly shouldn't be in this kind of situation in the first place? Like, does this support worker go up to every single couple and be like, you guys gotta stop walking together. You're triggering my client. When the obvious solution is for the client to get out of the way, leave the situation that's triggering them and work on their therapy. Because that's not my job. That literally is not my problem. The second anyone who has no authority over me says because you gotta change your behavior for this person. Like at that point, I'm not gonna take them seriously and I'm gonna probably like double down on what I'm doing because that is seriously ridiculous. Where I come from, I live in a free country where guess what? Men and women can walk next to each other and hold hands if they want to. I know it's scandalous, right? Watch out. So no, you're not overreacting, and honestly, if anything, you underreacted because you have every right to walk around any public facility however you want, especially if you're obeying the law and literally not bothering anybody. Am I the jerk for not sending $10 for Starbucks to my friend who literally is doing nothing to try and improve her life by getting a job? Because after I've been working myself into the ground working 2 jobs, I am seriously offended that she's begging me for money, and at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so back in April, me and this old coworker lost our jobs at around the same time. At first, I felt bad for the both of us. Like, dang, we're in the same boat. We hung out a couple of times, nothing major, but I really thought that we were cool. Well, fast forward to now, and my life is basically just me working 2 jobs. And this is not because I want to, but because I have to. I am tired all the time, constantly stressing about bills, just barely holding it together. Meanwhile, she's made 0 effort to find a job. Like none at all, not even pretending. She just floats around asking guys for money, and that's her whole plan. I try not to judge, but at the same time, it's hard not to when I'm out here grinding and she's not. So today, out of nowhere, she messages me and asks if I can send her $10 for Starbucks because it's her kid's birthday and she wants to get them a treat. I literally had to reread it. Starbucks for a kid? And I'm the one that she's hitting up? Like, girl, I'm over here working myself into the ground with 2 jobs, and you think that I'm the person who's gonna give you the money for cake pops? Now, it's not even about the $10. It's the fact that she hasn't done a single thing to try and change her situation. She's made asking people for money her lifestyle, and now she thinks that she can ask me as well. Meanwhile, I'm scraping just to pay my car note and keep the lights on. And I know some people will say, oh, it's her kid's birthday, have some compassion. But honestly, no. You don't need Starbucks to make a birthday special. Bake a cake at home, do a movie night, make popcorn, go to the park, something. Kids don't care if it's Starbucks specifically, but instead of putting in any effort, she'll just ask people for cash like it's nothing. I don't know, maybe I'm just salty because I'm exhausted and broke and bitter, but the audacity of her asking me for money when she hasn't even tried to get a job since April just really blows my mind. So am I the jerk? Because at this point, I'm not sure what to do. Okay, honestly, I don't blame you for a second. Your friend clearly doesn't appreciate how hard you're working and is only going to you because they see you're working and they just want some free extra cash to try and like get a treat for their kid. And it's like, dude, are you kidding me right now? If $10 is really what's hurting you, then you've got bigger problems. So no, in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk in the slightest. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own stories because we would love to hear what you have to say. Let's get started. Am I the jerk for telling my boyfriend that I can't be with him if he won't take our relationship public? Because even though we've been dating for almost a year, I'm honestly at a point where I seriously don't see this relationship going anywhere unless we go public in some kind of meaningful way. Here's what's going on. Okay, to start things out, I'm a 25-year-old female, and I've been dating my boyfriend, who I will call Evan, for almost a year. We met through mutual friends and we clicked instantly. We would go on long walks, have late night talks, surprise coffee drop-ins at work, etc. He's sweet, attentive, and makes me laugh until my cheeks hurt. But the only problem is that no one in his life knows that I exist. He says that he's private and doesn't like broadcasting relationships, but he also won't introduce me to his friends or family. He won't post a single picture of us and avoids going to public places near his neighborhood just in case someone sees us. Now, at first, I thought maybe he'd been burned before and just needed time, but it's been almost a year. I've told him that it hurts that I feel like a secret, especially since my friends and family all know and adore him. But last week, I finally said if we can't go public about our relationship, then I can't keep doing this. And when I did say this, he got upset and accused me of ruining something good over social media validation. I then told him it's not about likes, it's about feeling like he's proud to be with me. Well, ever since then, he's been distant. And when I told my friends about this, they're kind of split. Some of them say I'm right to want a relationship out in the open, while others think that I'm overreacting and should enjoy what we have privately. So seriously, am I the jerk for making this ultimatum? Because right now, I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong. Okay, I want to start off by saying that no, I don't think you're in the wrong because this really is a reasonable request. If you guys had just started like dating and going out and stuff like that, and it was early in the relationship, then I would understand why you don't want to go public. Like, it totally makes sense. What if it doesn't work out and you made all these like announcements and all this other stuff and blah, blah, blah. But you guys have been a thing for almost a year. Like, dude, what is going on right now? Which then then leads me to a point that a lot of people have pointed out in the comment section of this post, because over 1,000 people liked a post that basically said, oh yeah, he's hiding something. He's either hiding a wife, a girlfriend, or something from you that he doesn't want in the public. And honestly, I kind of have to agree with this to an extent. Like, he obviously doesn't want people to know about you, but it's like, wait, why? I thought you guys were happy together. Unless the original poster is like the affair partner or something like that, because it really sounds like this guy is straight up married. So no, you're not the jerk for making this ultimatum, because I think you're about to have a lot of stuff revealed to you that you're probably not ready to see. Because unfortunately, it kind of seems like your boyfriend has a secret that he's trying to hide, and I think that secret might be you. And if that is the case, then that really sucks. My boyfriend's supposed kindness is honestly making me lose my marbles, as he will go out of his way to help other people and still refuse to be invested in our relationship. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, so I feel like my boyfriend loves helping other people, and it's honestly becoming an issue. We've been together for 2 years, and it's starting to feel like all the kindness and compassion he used to show me is now reserved for his friends, his family, and total strangers. If I ask for help with something, it's like pulling teeth. We're talking a total nightmare. It takes days, weeks, months, to the point where I just do it myself, and I've largely stopped asking for help with things. But if seemingly anyone else needs him for something, he flies out the door. It's really starting to feel like he's done proving his kindness to me, and instead needs to just keep proving it to other people, if that makes any sense. This has all come to a head for me because we went to a mutual friend's party last night, and as we were on our way out, a man who is a total stranger to us asked us if we could give him a ride home. Now, normally I would say yes, but I got a bad sense about this guy, and since I was driving and it was my car, I just kindly said no and that I was sorry. My boyfriend then flashed me a look of rage, and sure enough, when we got to the car, he was angry with me for telling the guy no. He told me I was really rude and made him look bad in front of his friends. And I will admit, it probably would have been perfectly safe and fine to give this guy a ride home, but as I explained to my boyfriend, I just had a bad gut feeling, and I didn't feel bad saying no because there was no risk the guy would be driving drunk. Anyways, it's made me realize that he does this kind of thing all the time. It's like we're not allowed to say no when someone asks for something, and I end up looking like the jerk and the bad guy. I thought about this in connection with his weird need to help everyone but me, and I now feel desperate to figure this out if I can. I love my boyfriend, but lately I don't like how he makes me feel. Past efforts to communicate with him about this issue have all ended in him huffing about how I'm jealous that he has more friends than I do, which is definitely not the case, and that I must be a selfish person to try and make him feel bad about being a kind and helpful person. But I'm really not trying to make him feel bad at all. So how can I communicate the issue effectively so that my frustration is clear and I don't make him feel like I'm trying to infringe on his life and his friendships? What should I do? Okay, this is so annoying because your boyfriend sounds like one of those people who is only like kind and charitable when other people are watching. Like if there's an audience, then oh yeah, he's Mr. Charity. He'll give the shirt off his back as long as someone's watching. But clearly when the doors are closed, he absolutely will not do the same for you. You know, his girlfriend. And just look at the way he reacted when you said, no, we're not gonna give this stranger a ride home. He was more worried about how you made him look in front of his friends instead of actually helping out a stranger. Like this idiot literally showed his hand of cards and said, oh yeah, I don't actually care about helping this guy. I just care about how I look in front of my friends and you made me look bad. Like this guy's an idiot. He's not caring or compassionate. He just wants to look like he is so that other people think that about him. He wants people to say, oh, what a good guy, where he's essentially only doing this stuff to satisfy his own ego about being a good person. And honestly, the fact that he won't return that kindness to you in private is so telling in my opinion, because you should be the first person he helps out, not anybody else. And also for the record, there is nothing wrong with trusting your gut. There's no way in the world I would ever take a total stranger in my car and take him home. Like, no, I don't think so. Especially someone that I literally don't know from anywhere. Like at that point, they should call an Uber or call somebody else because I'm not going to be that person. So yeah, your boyfriend is a giant hypocrite, and the fact that he's trying to make you feel bad about this is so telling, because his image of being a good person is more important than actually being a good person. And despite the fact that the evidence is right there in front of him, he is just way too stupid to see it, and that is really sad. My girlfriend has been living with me for over 8 months now, after she was only supposed to stay with me for about 14 days just to visit. And now I've been literally paying for everything in her life, and it's honestly draining me to a point that I seriously just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. I'm a 31-year-old male and I'm living abroad, and my girlfriend is from my home country, which is a third world country by the way, where the income is incredibly low. She came to visit me for what was supposed to be a 14-day trip, and I paid for all of her expenses during that time. But at the end of her trip, she decided not to return home. She's now been living with with me for 8 months without a job, fully financially dependent on me. Now, for the first 3 months, I didn't say anything, but then she told me that she wanted to apply for school here, to which I explained that I couldn't keep supporting her 100%. She then cried and said it was my fault that she stayed, and told me that if I truly loved her, I'd support her no matter what. It's also worth noting that her family is wealthy and could easily help her without financial strain. I then said that I could help her a little bit, but I couldn't pay for everything. She then became distant and even deleted my pictures from her phone. Anytime I brought up money, she would cry until I gave in, and eventually I agreed to support her for another 3 months. Her attitude improved, but now we're at 8 months and nothing has changed. I've told her repeatedly I can't keep doing this, but every time she gets upset and then I give in because I don't want to see her cry. She recently asked about our future, and honestly, I don't even know what my future looks like anymore. My dream is to save up enough money to start my own business, but my current 9-to-5 salary is being drained to cover both of us. I'm feeling trapped between wanting to help her and needing to protect my own financial stability. I'm starting to resent the situation, but I still love her, and I don't want to destroy the relationship. What should I do? Okay, this is crazy because if you can't see that she's using you for money, then I don't know what to tell you. Because holy crap, she is literally not your girlfriend anymore, dude. She's practically squatting and she's using you for money. Because someone in the comment section made a really good point. If her family is really that wealthy, then they could easily get her a flight home. And I gotta say, like, if I was in your shoes, I would be ending this relationship and be like, okay, you've gotta go. This is not working, you're not contributing anything, and you're literally just crying until I give you money. So yeah, this relationship doesn't make any sense. I just don't know why you would put up with this, because I think that you could do way better than this crazy lady.
Karen demands proof that we will refund her $5, so my boss writes her an IOU. Have you ever had the irresistible urge to argue with someone for over an hour about $5? Me either, but I clearly don't speak for everyone because one customer at a clothing store I work at did exactly that. I begin this tale directly in the fray, but become an observer once my assistant manager takes control of the situation. I am me, a cashier. My coworker will be nicknamed JJ, and our assistant manager will be nicknamed Dee. We work in a semi-pricey women's clothing store in a semi-busy mall. The crazy lady will be called Cookie because her last name reminds me of one of those Italian biscuits. I will never forget her red glasses. I am at the register conducting for Cookie what I assume to be an ordinary return. When I hit the button to tender, I see exactly how she will be getting her money back. Alright, you're getting back X amount of dollars on your card and $5 back on a gift card, I tell her. Can you put those $5 on my credit card instead? She asked me. I get this question often. No, unfortunately, we can only refund you the way you originally paid, I inform her. Did you use a gift card when you paid for this? Yes, but you should be able to put it all back on my credit card. She keeps insisting that I somehow am able to perform a task that I cannot, and eventually asks to call a customer service rep. I swear, can you call customer service? Is the new, can I speak to the manager? I agree to call customer service and see if they can transfer the money over to Cookie's credit card, and I am halfway to picking up the phone when our assistant manager, Dee, walks by. Is everything okay here? She asks. I fill her in on the situation, with Cookie interrupting just to reinstate what I had said. I'll take over here, Dee decides. You clear out the fitting rooms. I go and do my allotted task while keeping an eye on the register. I can hear Dee explaining to Cookie what you can do and cannot do. And she soon calls customer service. While she is on hold with them, she answers Cookie's insane questions. I should be noted that Dee has a tendency to call everyone honey and darling. It's an adorable plague among the managers at the store. Don't patronize me, Cookie spits. What did I do? Dee asks, confused. You keep calling me honey. Stop with the sarcasm. I'm not being sarcastic, that's just how I talk. If you want me to stop doing that, I will stop. Every time I circle back to the register for clothes to put back, I hear some sort of insult being hurled at Dee. I don't know why you had to interfere. The other girl was handling it perfectly. I know fully well that the only reason Cookie thinks I was handling it perfectly is because I didn't stick around long enough for her to find a reason to hate me. Almost an hour and a half passes with Cookie's verbal abuse at Dee only escalating. The only employee in the store is JJ, who is eyeing the exchange with grave concern. When we are out of earshot of Cookie and any rational customer, all of whom are doing their utmost to ignore the woman throwing a public tantrum, JJ says, "We should call mall security." We can? I ask. Yeah, she can't be doing this and she won't leave. She's almost violent too. I feel so bad for Dee. What's the mall security number? I don't know. Check the register. I walk by the register and grab a hold tag. There's a list of relevant phone numbers posted on the monitor, including customer service and mall security. I grab a post-it note and I jot it down, posting the number on the bulletin in the back of the store. I'm hesitant to call mall security for an incident that has not turned into physical violence, though JJ walks by and seems to notice the security number too. But she also doesn't call. Sorry, y'all are going to get blue-balled today. Cookie isn't going to be dragged out of the store screaming. We keep the store running while Cookie forces Dee Dee to call internal customer service, hang up when she's put on hold for more than 3 minutes, and then call again when she decides she needs customer service again. Rinse and repeat. Dee Dee looks mad, but she keeps her cool. She's clearly past her boiling point. I will remind you that this is all over $5. $5. So they can put all your money back on your credit card. It will take a few days to process, Dee Dee says. Customer service has miraculously found a way. All hail our Lord and Savior, customer service. Of course, Cookie still isn't satisfied. I want it today. How can I trust that I'll get my money back? I want a receipt. Dee Dee chats back with the customer service person on the phone. Ma'am, we can only do it in a few days if you want your money back. No, I want a receipt. It's been half an hour. You can't keep me here. I'm not keeping you here. You can leave at any time you want. I can't leave without my money, but you won't give it to me. I just want to go home. Again, this was all over $5. And I'm telling you, we can give you your money back all on your credit card if you just give it a few days to go through. You can't do this to me. I need to go home. $5, people. It's all over $5. I keep working for another half an hour to the dreadful chore of, give me my money back, and I just want to go home. The latter sentence sounds like a child would when they ask their parents to go home. But this was a whole grown adult. It's been an hour. Let me leave. $5 freaking, ladies and gentlemen. I think Dee Dee has spoken to 3 different customer service representatives by now. She keeps having to hang up because of Cookie's dissatisfaction. Then I hear that sentence. Aren't you going to give me compensation for my time? I've been here for an hour because you've been keeping me here against my will. No, this can't be. We can't give you compensation, only your money back. But you're not even giving me my money back. I want compensation. At 55 minutes into this ordeal, Dee Dee writes Cookie the least legally binding receipt as a confirmation that she will indeed receive her $5 back within a few days. I catch a glimpse. It's akin to a child's IOU, but Cookie seems satisfied. She does not receive compensation, thank golly. Cookie at the long last walks out the doors yelling something about how we kept her far too long and how she can finally leave. You kept Dee Dee for far too long, you old hag. When I get home, I remember that Cookie was there the night before too. She had a back and forth with one of our main managers for half an hour. I remember her bright red glasses. On my next shift, I learned from Dee Dee that Cookie was also at another one of our locations where she threw her purse at the staff. We're crossing our fingers that she gets banned from our stores. But it's been months, and while I haven't seen her show up again, she is still active on our customer list. The beast is still out there, y'all. But let me know, what would you have done in this situation? First off, I love getting called honey or sugar, especially when it's from somebody with a southern accent. It sounds so awesome. As for this Karen who caused all this drama, I would have just kept repeating that there's nothing we can do and that she can call customer service herself. But then again, this is the exact reason why I never took a customer service job. And when I was a cashier, I always made sure to get a team lead or manager to deal with customers like this. It's above my pay grade. The new HR lady tries to introduce a new dress code at work. I find a loophole that drives her absolutely crazy. This incident happened about 6 years ago. The bosses, at the time, were usually very cool and easy to get along with. However, some Karen got into HR and insisted on changing the work culture to suit her desire/vision. She rewrote the dress code, and overnight, instead of being allowed to show up dressed comfortably, as long as it wasn't dirty, smelly, full of holes, looking at you, tech support center, we suddenly had to dress business professional. She even specified the materials the clothing could be made of. She tried almost firing anyone that wouldn't follow the dress code before a manager, one I still love to this day, told her to calm down. Because not only had she not published the dress code, it hadn't even been approved by management yet. HR Karen gets her memories in a knot and pulls strings to get it approved in a couple of days. So in those couple of days, I was reading through the dress code, trying to see what I could do to make her regret it. The dress code word for word, clothing is to be made of woolen material only, unless a specified exception is made below. Allowable clothing is listed as business suits, button-up dress shirts, non-monocolored ties, leather shoes, skirts, and blouses. If wearing a skirt or blouse, silk materials are accepted. Okay, note the silk exception was put in solely for her, as she claimed that wool gave her hives. Anyway, the air conditioning had been out for weeks, and we had been getting by in the building with big fans and wearing light shorts and shirts. It was a hot summer. So I searched for a loophole in the new dress code. I'm sure you can already see what loophole I found and exploited. Note, despite having lost a lot of weight since then, I am still a hefty, very hairy man. I'm 200 plus pounds lost since then, with a very long beard. So day one of the new dress code, on the way to work, I stopped in at a local Goodwill. I bought the most garnished skirt I could find that I could squeeze into, and the most feminine blouse I could find. I paid for them and got dressed at the gas station just down the street from my work location. I waltzed into work with lots of stares coming my way. However, I was the only man on the floor not sitting in a pool of sweat. The skirts are surprisingly breezy and the blouses are like there's nothing at all. Less than 30 minutes in, everyone in the building can hear HR Karen screaming at me as she runs up to my desk and demands I go into her office for disciplinary action. I tell her I cannot do that as the company policy states that disciplinary action can only be undertaken by the employee's team lead and site manager, not HR. She then screams at both of them to force me into her office. They both give me the stink eye, but I give them the thumbs up and a big grin and say, "Please, please, please make me go into her air-conditioned office." Did I also mention that she had the only working air condition on site? So the four of us trudge into her office, with me grinning ear to ear. Myself and many coworkers laughing as this large, hairy, heavily bearded man in a silk skirt and blouse walks past everyone. All because I, and they, know how ridiculously I look, and how they know I only pulled stunts at work like this when I'm 100% in the right. So we get into HR Karen's office and I sit down. She tells me I'm going to be fired for insubordination and breaking dress code. I laugh in her face and tell her terminations can only be processed upon agreement by the team lead of the employee, site manager, and HR. You are the one that insisted upon and wrote that rule. Unless they both agree, you are lying and can shut up. She was screaming at the top of her lungs at this point. She said it was sexual harassment against all the women in the office for a fat, hairy man to be in women's clothing. Oh, can you point out the dress code and where only women are allowed to wear skirts and blouses? As soon as I said that, my team lead suddenly lit up and started giggling as he knew where I was taking this. Karen got out a written copy of the dress code and started sputtering and stammering as she read it word for word as I typed above. Gender was not mentioned, only materials and types of clothing allowed. She started screaming at me again for being inappropriate. The site manager looked at her and said, "Do you really want to get fired for sexual discrimination and sexual harassment? He has you caught in a ringer over a barrel of fire, and it could cost potentially millions." Strangely enough, the dress code was rescinded before the end of the day, and we were allowed to go back to the way we had been dressing. As an extra, she is no longer with the company. She has been gone for years. She made blunder after blunder, usually screaming at me and my bosses, but I always pointed her at the policies she made and got approved, as I was only following them to the letter. Give this man a medal. I absolutely love this amount of shoving a stupid rule in someone's face. Personally, I would have been pushing to get fired. Hit them with that discrimination lawsuit and most likely get a terrible higher up fired in return. That's a win-win, baby. Remember, folks, just because you are in a position of power doesn't mean you need to use it. Sometimes it's good to just be chill. My boss tells me to stop pestering the grill master, Josh. So I do exactly that, and it leads to him getting demoted. Was reminded by another post about my time in fast food and how I maliciously complied. Anyways, back in college, I worked on the on-campus food place. Your basic burgers, fries, wraps, and small salads. My shift started at 11:25, doing wraps until 11:55 when Josh left and I manned the grill and someone else did wraps. Josh was your typical Josh, and it was his way or the highway. He'd get really mad when I'd throw more burgers on the grill or flip something while he was trying to chat up the dishwasher. I did this because he had no understanding of how much food was required to feed college students during small breaks between classes. Eventually, he complained enough that I was told, "Josh is on the grill until 11:55, so stop pestering him and do your station." So I did. I stopped touching the grill. The next shift, he leaves at 11:55, and I get on the grill and I immediately throw down 400 frozen raw burger patties. 2 minutes later, the cashier starts yelling, "Where are the burgers?" Sorry, I just got on the grill and Josh had only 5 in the warmer and 3 in the window. I know we always have about 100 students between 11:55 and 12:20, and they almost all get the burger meal, and I was told not to touch the grill. The burgers finish after a few minutes and the next batch goes on, but the grill has cooled a little, so it takes even longer. The line of kids waiting for food is longer than the line ordering, and management is mad. I get chewed out for not being fast enough and just ask, "Do you want raw burgers or do you want to talk to Josh?" It only took one more shift of this for them to realize that my meddling was actually what kept us afloat during lunch rush. I'd often cook an entire grill of burgers while he was swinging and missing with the dishwasher. They eventually printed out a sheet of how many burgers / chicken, etc. needed to be prepped for certain rush times, and gave Josh a very stern talking to about how to be a team player. Also, Josh sucked, because he'd cook all the burgers well done. Like, well done. Then they'd sit in the warmer for another 5 to 15 minutes. He didn't even know how to rotate either. So you were eating goddamn hockey pucks. Josh ruined so much ground beef. He eventually got moved to salad and stock because he couldn't be trusted with anything that was fast-paced. Management saw how fast everything moved when he wasn't joshing everything up. I love that the name Josh is being used to describe how someone is at their job. We already know what Karen stands for, but I'd like to throw a couple other names out there from personal experience. That person is a Tim would describe people who manipulate others into doing things for them. Felix would be someone who never listens and constantly messes up, and people named Joe are your mom. My Karen neighbor doesn't like where my girlfriend parks and thinks that residents should get priority parking in the streets. I make her regret this later. I live on a cul-de-sac where I rent the back house from my landlords. There's another elderly tenant who lived inside the landlord's house I was very close with, and we'll call him Good Sir. I have these neighbors next to me who I've gotten along with for as long as I've lived here. Before the pandemic, the husband, we'll call him Mr. Chill, has been cool with me. My neighbors have 3 cars between them. 2 belong to Mr. Chill and the wife, we'll call her Miss Hypocrite, and the other car belongs to their daughter. We'll call her the Hog. When the pandemic hit, Mr. Chill's family, for reasons that didn't make sense to me, suddenly stopped parking their cars in the driveway and would park them all on the curb in front of their houses, as well as the Hog taking the spot I usually parked in more so than their parents did. Finally, after a few months of this going on, I see the Hog outside and I ask her if she wouldn't mind sharing the spot. I explain my situation with being overworked and exhausted from my job. She gives me an annoyed look and just responds by saying, "I use it." I realize that I'm wasting my time and tell her never mind and go inside. Not even 5 minutes later, there is a knock at my door and it's Good Sir letting me know that the neighbors want to talk to me. Mrs. Hypocrite is standing there all upset asking me what the problem is. I explain to Miss Hypocrite what I said to the Hog, and she apologizes for coming off so angry and says, "You know, the street parking is what it is. It's first come first serve, and we're not parking to try and give anyone a hard time." The conversation goes nowhere, but it ends peacefully. About a week later, I'm parked in my spot for a change, and my girlfriend comes over to visit with our child. It's summertime and it's hot. Towards the evening, I get a knock on the door and it's Good Sir. He says the neighbors want to talk, and I see Mr. Chill standing right there, and he just asks if my girlfriend could move her car up because she's got a bunch of curb behind her car, but not enough for another car to fit. Before I can even say anything, Miss Hypocrite shows up out of nowhere and goes off saying, "I'm sick of going back and forth about this. She is double parked and there's not enough room for another car to fit. I understand that she's your girlfriend and she's visiting, but I believe that residents should have priority parking first. It looks like you guys are trying to save the parking spot for yourselves, and I'm not dealing with this anymore. She needs to move her car." I'm in complete shock and I have a lot I want to say, but I don't. I just go inside and ask my girlfriend to move. She thinks they're hypocrites and just moves because she feels like that's all they have to feel proud of in their lives. The only reason I gave in to them is just so my landlords did not get involved and risk it turning into them not wanting to renew my lease. Otherwise, I would have said something. Funny enough, even though they got mad at my GF for double parking, the Hog is the queen of doing that on the cul-de-sac without Mrs. Hypocrite telling her anything. Last year in November, Good Sir wasn't doing too well and went into hospice care. He gave me his car as a gift and a thank you for being family to him. Now I had 2 cars, 2 spots, and an idea. Enter petty, malicious compliance. Miss Hypocrite said the street parking is first come, first served, and that residents should have priority over the parking. Well then, so be it. I only need to use one car and the other can just stay parked. Since I am a resident, I decided to park whichever car I'm not using in the spot that I would normally park at, and swap them out every 2 weeks in rotation. My girlfriend parks where good sir used to. The hog, her boyfriend, and Miss Hypocrite have not touched that spot since I started doing this, since one of my 2 cars is always there. As a little bonus too, Miss Hypocrite put one of their cars they aren't using back in the driveway. And when there's a party going on and all the parking is taken up, the spot in front of their house is sometimes open, and since again, I am a resident and the guests have taken up all the other spots, well, I guess I do need a spot to park at after all, right? Sorry, Miss Hypocrite or the hog, I guess you'll have to park around the block and take a nice walk to get to your house. I'm only following what you believe the parking rules should be. Rest in peace, good sir. I miss you every day, and I'll always love you as my own family. But let me know, am I the jerk? I don't really have that much of an opinion on this story. Parking disputes are always the worst. It's definitely something that has caused me anxiety before, because if you've ever had a party and one of your guests slightly blocks a driveway, the way the neighbor approaches you about it can make things hostile real quick. And it's not like they just go away, they live next door. So yeah, I hate parking disputes. I worked for 2 years trying to get the position I wanted, and when my job gave it to somebody that didn't deserve it, I decided to get my revenge. I worked for 2 years at a tile store. I handled customers as well as I worked in the warehouse. But for those 2 years, I worked the earliest shift that no one wanted, because you had to receive the daily truck and put the tile orders away by hand at 6 in the morning. But I also said I would work every Saturday as well. Now, I didn't do this because I hated myself or wanted to suffer. It was because I wanted the outside sales job. The outside salesman that got the job entered right after I started, and we hit it off quickly. We will call him Joe. Joe confided in me that he had no plans to continue this job after a year or so. So from the get-go, I said I wanted that job and wanted to work my butt off to get it. Pulling shifts no one wanted, doing jobs no one would do, and doing the things that were definitely not part of my job description. This including doing a lot of outside sales jobs. I would take over when Joe would call out or just needed help. He came to rely on me and gave me part of his job. I saw this as type of an internship and thought it would pay off. Fast forward 2 years. Joe tells me that he's about to put in his 2 weeks and to get my resume together. He puts in his 2-week notice. I immediately put in my application. I got the backing from both Joe and the branch manager to get the job, and I did a pretty good job on the interview. I knew I was pretty much a shoo-in. I had the seniority and I had never caused a problem in the time that I was there. I had a very good relationship with the contractors I sold to, and I knew all of them by name. The main part of the outside sales job was working with the contractors, so I felt confident, to say the least, that I had what the company was looking for. 2 other people applied as well. An ex-convict who had anger problems, this will come up later, we will call him Bob, and a recently hired woman who had no experience in tile. We will call her Ann. The only other job that she had done was a secretary, and she was currently just helping customers with the selections. Both of them were older than me. I was in my early 20s and both of them in their 30s. A couple days later, I got a call from HR telling me I didn't get the job. Instead, they wanted to give it to Ann. I won't lie, I thought I misheard it or that it was a prank at first. The only reason HR would give me as to why they passed me up for the position was, "You're just too good of a worker and valuable at your position for us to lose you. You do such a good job and are responsible that we would hate to lose that. So because I'm good at my job, you won't hire me for another one with more responsibilities? But to show you how much we appreciate you, we're giving you a $1 raise." Do I still get my yearly $1 raise on top of this in a couple of months? No, think of this as us giving it to you 2 months early. After this, I was fuming for a couple of days. Their excuse didn't make any sense, and I had a feeling that I was being discriminated against due to my age. However, I was set upon making a point that they had chose the wrong person and came up with a plan. Because I was good at my job, I didn't get the outside sales job. So if I was bad at my job, maybe they would promote me then. Let me rephrase. I wasn't bad at my job, but I told my manager that I no longer would be working the morning shift. I would no longer be working on Saturdays, would no longer do the worst jobs, and would no longer be doing any jobs that fell outside of my job description, including the outside sales job that I've been helping with. Anne goes out for a couple of weeks of training and personal time, during which things are already starting to fall apart. My manager asked me to fill in for Anne just while she is away. He understands why I'm doing what I am, but asks as a personal favor. I agree, and things began to get back to where they were before. Anne comes back and I resume my firm stance. Anytime something was supposed to be done by the outside sales position that I normally did, I would send it her way. Customers' problems, heavy things to lift, and just any other favors I used to do for Joe, I refused to do for her. It gave me a little relief to see her running everywhere trying to get everything done. She only asked me once to help her, to which I told her that it wasn't my job. Those first couple of weeks, things were a little rough as most of the jobs were left over from when Joe and I were running things. So most of the problems came up from the daily grind. But the weeks that followed were chaotic to say the least. Items came in late, jobs were missing or unordered, contractors didn't understand where their materials were. Mind you, these guys get paid per job. So every day their materials aren't there is another day they don't work or get paid. So when their materials don't come in, their workers who are paid hourly are getting paid for no reason at all. My favorite one was when she accidentally sent an order across the country, costing the company thousands as we lost money on that job. As things were starting to turn into a dumpster fire, as I knew it would, HR called me in to talk about my attitude. We have heard of your attitude as of late. It doesn't sound like you're being a team player. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Have I said something hurtful to someone? No. Did I hurt someone's feelings unintentionally? No. Then I don't understand what attitude you're talking about then. We have received word that you aren't being as helpful as you were to Joe as you are now to Anne. Well, you see, I'm far too valuable at my current job. I can't possibly detract away from that. They immediately saw that they had made a mistake giving me that reason as to why they didn't hire me. They then told me that I needed to be more of a team player and that they would pay me an additional $1 an hour when the yearly raise came up in 2 months. I told them that it wasn't my job to do what they were asking, and if they wanted me to do that, they would have to negotiate my contract. They told me that they would need to discuss it and to reconsider being a team player. I didn't relent, and they weren't interested in renegotiating my contract. Well, 2 months after Anne got the job and things went to hell, she stepped down. Again, I put in my resume, as did Bob. Now remember how I said he had a slight anger issue? Well, that came to a head just before Anne put in her 2 weeks notice. Bob threatened a contractor. The contractor was a real piece of work, but that doesn't excuse the fact that Bob threatened the guy. Regardless, with that now happening and Anne putting in her 2 weeks, I couldn't see how they could not hire me. It was me or someone who threatened customers. Once again, I go through the process, but this time I play my cards close to my chest. They didn't know that after Anne was first chosen over me, I started to look for a new job. Just as this interview process was going on, a company called me back and offered me an outside sales job at their company. It was lower pay than my current company's, but they didn't need to know that. They also did not need to know that I had accepted the position and told them that I needed to finish my 2 weeks. I wasn't going to give them my 2 weeks though. I was going to make it look like it was a competition and try to string it out for those 2 weeks. The company offered me the outside sales job and nearly begged me to take it. They apologized for making the bad decision of picking Anne over me and told me that they would love to have me in the position. Now let the fun begin. I promptly told them that I would need to think about it as their competitor had just offered me that same job for a higher pay. The look on their faces was to die for. I pretended that it was back and forth for 2 weeks, which conveniently went over Anne's quitting date and my new job starting date. They got anxious because now they didn't have anyone for the job and finally gave me a final offer. I promptly shot them down and told them that I didn't want to work for a company that treats hardworking employees like poop. They could sleep in the bed they made. I then told them I was starting the next day at the other company. I have never been so happy. But let me know. Was I the jerk? I wish I could say that this is uncommon in the workplace, but I know for a fact that age and sometimes gender play a role in getting hired. At my old job, it was almost non-existent that women worked in the automotive side of the company. HR would tell you that it was because women never applied for the position. But the rumored secret reason on why they didn't want women on second or third shift was because they wanted to avoid any trouble that might come from men and women working together at night. To be fair, if the stories I heard from the old timers at that job are true, that place used to be wild. Anyways, this all changed when our only female associate on first shift wanted to move to second shift. Obviously, management didn't want this, but they legally couldn't deny her request since there was an opening. Anyways, since I got to work with her, she was awesome at her job. She was in college, she had a great head on her shoulders. She quickly became the one person I counted on during my shift since I was the lead. And when a new lead spot opened up, I thought she was the best option for the job. Unfortunately, management didn't agree because they said they wanted somebody with more experience. I took this as she's too young to be in a lead position, and they ended up giving it to another person that had applied that had been there for more years. Personally, I'm not a strong believer that just because someone has been at the job longer means that they are better fit to lead a team. But that's just my opinion. Entitled Karen demands I order her a shirt in green. When I don't, she screams and storms off. This is once again from a long time ago working in my department store. While my coworker was at lunch one day, I was left all on my own on the shop floor in a woman's clothing section. A lady came stalking up to the till with a navy blue top on a hanger. She thrusts it at me and asks demandingly, "Do you have this in green?" I said to her very politely in return, "I don't think so, but I can check the back of the rail for you if you like." Sometimes tops would be buried at the back by accident. I already had a good look there and there was no green ones out there, she informs me, huffing and crossing her arms. Then I'm afraid that we don't have any, I inform her with a friendly smile. "Aren't there any in the back?" she asks as her voice is rising in pitch. I am fairly sure that we don't have any back there as we always try to put out as many of every color as we have in stock, but I'll go check. One moment. I quickly accessed the shop floor. I quickly go across the shop floor and I made my way into the back room. Once inside, I went to the area where the tops are stocked. I checked the hanging rails and no, there is no sign of green tops in this style. Other tops similar to it, but not the exact one the lady has shown me. I come back out and make my way over to the till and shake my head at the lady, saying apologetically at the same time, "No, there is no green tops in this style back there either. Would you like me to check on the system if we have any coming in?" "Yes," she says in an annoyed voice. I go over to a different part of the till area where the stock computer is kept and I start up the computer. For you younglings reading the story, this was an old black screen with white flashing rectangular cursor type of computer where writing came out in white. I turn to the lady and ask politely, "May I take the top to enter the item code so I can find it in the system?" Wordlessly, she thrusts the top at me. I accept it, carefully type in the code on the tag and then hand it back to the lady saying politely, "Thank you for that, madam." She accepts the top back from me with a grumble, the only part which I heard being, "So slow." When the page on the computer finally came up, I quickly noticed something. The color green was not listed as an option for this top, meaning that more than likely this top did not come in green at all, which explained why there was none on the shop floor or the stock room. I internalize my groan because I am sure this lady is not going to like this piece of information in the slightest. "Madam, this top is not listed as coming in green. We have a similar top to it in green if you'd prefer." I didn't get to finish my sentence because she interrupted me. No, I want this one in green." She emphasizes the no, want, and green. "I'm sorry, madam, this is not in green in that style." I tell her as calmly as possible. "How can there be no green?" she demands of me. I stood there thinking, I don't know, I don't work for them. But I somehow managed to say instead, "I'm afraid I don't know." "Is there no other way to check why I can't get it in green?" she asked huffingly. I think for a moment and then an idea comes to me. I can find the company catalog just to make sure that it doesn't come in green. And we simply didn't choose to stock green. "Yes, go do that," she says enthusiastically. I'm sure she imagines her victory when there is a green version of the top in the catalog. However, I'm not so sure that she will get that victory as we usually order at least some of every color available in an item, unless there were a tremendous number of different colors. I go to the back office this time. I go over to the bookshelf which is full of catalogs, and after a bit of a search, I eventually manage to find the correct catalog. When I returned to the front with it, the lady's eyes went wide. You see, this catalog was huge. It could have been used as a brick in a building in a giant castle or as a doorstop. I heave it on top next to the till. It makes a satisfying bang as I place it down. I open it up and find the correct section. I go to it and after turning a few pages, I locate the item. When I find the top, I notice right away that it doesn't come in green. Only white, black, gray, and navy blue. I look up at the lady, turn the catalog towards her, point at her top and say as I move my finger over the available colors, "As you can see, madam, it only comes in black, white, navy blue, and gray. There's no green option," she exclaims in a fury. There is another top similar to it which comes in green. I point at one slightly lower on the page. The only difference between this top and the one she picked up was the ends of the 3/4 length sleeves were turned up. She glares at me and says slowly, "I don't want that. I want this in green." But it doesn't come in green, madam. All I can do is offer you a similar style tops, which is what we can order for you in green. I tell her, still trying to stay calm. "This is stupid," she says to me again before shoving the top into my chest and saying furiously, "Do something about it." I feel like yelling at her, "What do you want me to do?" I take a deep breath and I manage to say in an even voice, "As I said before, all I can do is order a top in a similar style in green, or I can order you the top you want in another color." She let out the most frustrated scream and stormed off. When my coworker returned and I told her what happened, she let out a deep sigh and said to me, "I bet I know who that was." She then described the lady to me perfectly, and when I said that was her, she told me that this lady is well known for making all sorts of impossible demands from the staff, and not to worry about it if she did complain, because the management knew what she was like and wouldn't reprimand me over what had happened. I still wonder to this day why that lady with such a terrible reputation amongst the staff and managers was never banned from the store. But anyways, let me know, what would you have done in this situation? Why are people like this? I mean, seriously. And Karens wonder why everyone starts recording everything now. It's because people need to see to believe. Unfortunately, I don't think publicly shaming Karens hurts them in any way. I mean, they choose to act like that in public already. I doubt they care about what the internet thinks. But at least people are now more aware that Karens are a thing. My jealous boss doesn't like me, so I got him fired after he tells me to focus on my job. In early 2020, I was hired under the title assistant manager at a local automotive shop. We mainly sold tires and alloy wheels for passenger vehicles. The company owned several stores. I reported directly to my manager, who then reported to the owner of the company. Shortly after I was hired, I noticed the behavior of the manager was far from professional. He would constantly mock and berate me for being the new guy. I believe part of this was jealousy and insecurity on his part, as I ended up recording more sales under my name within the first few months. He would also knock off work early and start drinking booze whilst the rest of us continued to work. I remember when he found out that I participated in MMA training sessions after work, he tried to goat me into a fight for his own amusement. Clearly this guy didn't like me, and I was starting to get the feeling that he was trying to get me to snap and lose my cool. As a result, I would be fired from my employment. I became even more certain with what happened next. During the few months that I had worked there, I noticed that our takings for the day and sales records did not match. I would often spend half an hour to an hour at work trying to figure out where the errors were coming from, whilst the manager would simply throw his hands in the air and exclaim that he had no idea what was happening. The reoccurring issue seemed to be that our cash taking had been recorded incorrectly. There would sometimes be an excessive amount of cash that didn't match up that was recorded on our savings and invoicing software. I was, at the time, an accounting student studying towards my bachelor's degree. I was already suspicious of the cash being out each day. However, given how the manager had been treating me up until this point, I was concerned that any complaint would somehow be twisted and used against me, and oh boy was I right. Several weeks later, my manager took some time off. During this time, I managed a personal record in store sales, and I also noticed something interesting. The cash was never out at the end of each shift. I reported this directly to the owner of the company. Given I was the acting manager during the time my manager was away, I was expected to report to the owner every single day. And I explained what had been occurring whilst the manager was there. In all honesty, I was hopeful that the owner would be having a word with the manager about the discrepancies. However, I was also weary. I also believed that once the owner spoke to my manager, that the manager would immediately know it was me who was reporting this. When the manager returned to work, he immediately approached me with a disgruntled look on his face. "I've spoken with the owner. You tried to blame me for the discrepancies? You should focus on doing your job properly, then this wouldn't happen." I was quite taken aback on how angry he was, though I wasn't surprised that he twisted it and tried to place blame on me. Given his reaction, I'm even more suspicious at this point. He wants me to do my job properly, huh? Cue malicious compliance. That same week, I got to work. I started paying attention to what customers were paying when they were dealing with the manager. Behind his back, I began examining all of his sales transactions and invoices with a fine-tooth comb. As the days rolled by, I started to find evidence of his dishonesty. When it comes to a few cash sales, my manager would do the following. He would tell the customer the price was $200 if he paid cash, would discount the price by $50 in the sales/invoicing software, would put the extra cash into the till and record a $150 cash sale. Before we did the cash up at the end of the day, he would sneakily pocket the extra cash whilst no one was around. Though he was very foolish, he clearly couldn't remember the exact amount he had swindled. Hence why the cash would be up some days, didn't swindle enough, or the cash would be down, swindled too much. I had took screenshots of the discounts he had been giving on sales and sent them to the business owner, along with a report. A report with the detailed descriptions of my findings. The report also showed that on the days that he wasn't there for the cash count, there was no variance. When he was there, well, you know. The owner was infuriated. This man had been a trusted employee for years. The owner was so infuriated, in fact, he ordered my manager to do a mandatory drug test, pee in a cup style. On the same day he found out, and no surprises, he failed. Turns out my manager had quite the substance habit. This was most likely the sole motive for his stealing cash, and the owner was beside himself. We operate heavy machinery every day in this store, and so the thought of a manager walking around sloshed wouldn't sit well with health and safety professionals. In fact, it could have landed the owner in some serious legal trouble if an accident or injury occurred under the manager's watch. The manager was terminated immediately for violation of his contract, and was later taken to court by the owner in an attempt to recover the stolen funds. Safe to say, I was promoted to the store manager position shortly after his termination. But let me know, who was the jerk in this situation? The boss or the OP? At my old automotive job, I worked with quite a few people that had substance issues. Some who knew how to hide it well, and others, well, not so well. I remembered that there was this one older dude who I believe was doing some pretty heavy stuff, because he was messing up some of the most simplest tasks on the job and was always sweating. Like, I know working around engines can get hot, but this dude seemed like he would run a marathon every single day. He also got caught smoking in the bathroom once, which was pretty crazy because my job let you have like unlimited smoke breaks. Dude just didn't want to walk all the way outside, I guess. I think his habit eventually got the best of him because he just randomly started missing scheduled work days, and that's what eventually got him fired. It was pretty sad to see, but you can't help people that don't want to help themselves. Dumb dad is playing around with live crabs to impress his kid, almost cost me a finger. I haven't worked in retail for a really long time, and this story reckons back to my first job in retail. First, a little background. I worked in a very small, family-owned store that sold live seafood, primarily lobsters. The store was in the Northwest United States, so we sometimes had local seafood also. One time, we had just gotten in a fresh shipment of Dungeness crab. Dungeness crab is delicious, but it does not last very long, so buying the crab alive is the best way to preserve freshness. The store had an enormous saltwater tank to keep the crabs in, but to take them home, you would have to wrap them in newspaper. Did I mention that this was a long time ago? Crabs are pretty easy to handle if you know how, but if you're careless, they have claws that can feel like a pair of vice grips. Crabs are helpless if you lay them on their back. To wrap them up, you simply lay them on their back next to the corner of the newspaper. To wrap them up, you simply lay them on their back next to the corner of a piece of newspaper and wrap the corner of the newspaper over the crab. The crab will fold its legs in because its vital organs are on the bottom. Once it has its legs folded in, you just wrap the sides of the newspaper over its both sides and roll it up in the newspaper. To cook it, you just grab the utmost corner of the newspaper and hold it over a pot of boiling water, and the crab just unrolls and ends up in the pot. One day, this dad comes into the store with two sons who are both preteens, and the dad wanted to order some crabs. Occasionally, people who bought crabs made an issue with whether the crabs had all their legs. It is not uncommon to find a crab who is missing a leg or two. Since they were sold by the pound, most people didn't really care. But this dad wanted to inspect the crabs that I was giving him, so he came around the corner where I had laid them down on their backs on the table so I could weigh them. He evidently wanted to impress the boys that were with him because he picked up one of the crabs to show the boys. I didn't know what his experience with crabs was, and plus I was just a kid myself, so I just let him handle the crab. The crab was almost able to get its pincher claws on the guy's hand, and he must have known how strong these little suckers are because he quickly put the crab back down. Unfortunately, this genius put the crab down on its legs. Crabs spend some time out of water, so they can run pretty fast to keep away from gulls and other birds that love to eat them. So once this crab was on its legs, it took off running. It fell off the counter and landed on the floor. Still on its legs, it began running toward the darkest place it could see, which was under the big cooking pot where we had to cook the crab. If it got under there, it would be very difficult to get out, so I literally had to jump on the crab to get it. I ended up getting my hand under the crab, but I went too far under the crab and it was able to reach my fingers with its claws. As soon as it got a grip of my finger, it felt like someone was gripping my finger with vice grips, and it hurt worse than anything I had previously experienced in my brief 17 years of life. I also knew that crabs have 2 of these pinchers, and the crab was trying to grab me with its other claw. So I had to act fast. I was able to flop the crab back onto the table on its back when I looked at my finger. I started to feel dizzy and I knew I was about to pass out from the trauma. I know it was just my finger, but the pain was intense. I somehow managed to keep the crab from grabbing me with its other claw, and I also grabbed a knife from out of the knife rack. I stabbed the crab right in the middle where I learned its heart was. As soon as I stabbed the crab, the pressure from my fingers subsided, so I was able to get loose from the crab before I passed out. I wasn't actually conscious for the next part, but evidently the dad backed away and one of my coworkers wrapped up his crabs and he quickly exited the shop. When I came to, I was laying down on the floor of the office with my hand in a pan of cold water. Somehow, the owner of the store didn't think to include a first aid kit as part of the essentials of running the business. Fortunately, one of my female coworkers had bandages in her purse, so I was able to stem the bleeding. The swelling was still pretty bad and my fingertip was shredded. That bozo left with 2 live crabs and 1 dead one. I only hope he tried to pick up one of the live one himself. I'm sorry if you guys wanted the idiot to suffer in this story, but unfortunately it was me. I ended up working retail just for a few more short years. This experience was enough to convince me to choose a non-retail job. There was a couple interesting comments on this post. I worked retail for many moons. I have dealt with many dumb customers, but I have never endured any kind of physical pain because of the customer's actions. You deserve a gold star, OP. By the way, what ended up happening with your finger? I wasn't able to write for at least a week, and riding my bike was an exercise in pain for about a month. Almost 50 years later now, so the damage is gone except for a tiny area on my fingertip that is still numb. I also wanted to include this other comment because it shows just how strong crabs can be. I used to work with live barty crab, offloaded them from the boat so they could be processed at the plants. That species isn't necessarily the strongest. They're above Dungeness and snow, but dwarf in comparison to brown and red king. But they're super aggressive. Anyways, one fateful day I had to pull a particularly big crab for inspection. And this little dude grabbed the very tip of my middle finger and squeezed it with all its might. Mind you, this is through a layer of cotton and rubber gloves. And it still took me to my knees. There was no bleeding or swelling, but I did lose feeling in my fingertip for a week. Def not an experience I want to repeat again. But let me know, have you guys had any bad experiences with crabs? I've dealt with a lot of bad customers in my time, but I don't think I've ever gotten hurt because of them. So I can't say I relate to this OP, but I have worked with a bunch of coworkers who have gotten hurt. Had one guy that thought he could hold a wrench and start an engine to tighten apart once. Dude just calmly came up to me and was like, "Hey, I need to leave." And his hand was wrapped in a towel to stop the bleeding. Had another genius try to do an oil dip while the engine was ramping at its highest speed. This caused oil to shoot everywhere and on top of exhaust near other engines. And lastly, I didn't even have to clock in for this one, but I was pulling into the work parking lot. This other coworker decided he would rather back up and leave the parking lot through the entrance instead of going around to the exit. He didn't see me pulling in and clearly didn't hear my horn before backing into my car. So yeah, I've worked with plenty of guys similar to the dad in this OP story. The photography studio I worked for was gonna fire me, so I decided to take back all the things that I bought that made our lives easier. I love taking photos of people, to the point where I have 2 resumes for applying for jobs, and one of them is specifically for photography. So I was psyched when I got a job in a photo studio, and it wasn't like high quality work, but it was still awesome. I took a lot of photos of very cute babies in particular. Well, the company had a 3-strike policy. Once they were 3 issues with you, you were gone. They made you sign off on every single one of these reports. It doesn't matter how much later it was when you got your next strike, they never went away. Doesn't seem like a great business model, but okay. And being fair, I did get 2 strikes which were very reasonable. One day I missed work because I forgot to set an alarm. It was a super irregular schedule and it wasn't always easy to keep track of. The next strike happened because I scheduled a photo shoot for before the beginning of a shift accidentally. The program was supposed to only show you times that an employee would be available for doing photo shoot, and they changed our hours with very little warning. So the photo shoot that I had scheduled the week before would have been within our hours, but was no longer. I felt super bad for the mom and daughter who came in early for their photos and helped them sort everything out with a free photo redemption and apology. I got my second strike for that. Now the last strike, I actually got 2 on the same day. Around Christmas, our store goes nuts. We have to have twice as many people working in order to keep everything in order. During that, I was training a new employee, helping her with her photo shoots, my own, running cash, taking passport photos, and teaching her the rules for them. It was a nightmare. What made it worse is that one of the customers submitted 2 complaints that day about me. See, this customer felt I was pushing her to buy photos. Literally, all this company cares about is pushing photo packages. And I was instructed to relentlessly do it more and with more energy because I didn't make enough people feel like they should have them. So great, I convinced a customer to spend money instead of giving them free things and not getting $1 from them, like the company was always yelling at me to do. And I got a complaint for that. Great. And the other complaint was even more ludicrous. The customer felt I was being too bossy with the other photographer. The one that I was training, the one that didn't even know how to do the job yet. Apparently, I deserved to be fired for telling her how to do things. I was heartbroken. It's been a few years now, so I've gotten over it, but I was so happy working as a photographer. But here's where the malicious compliance kicks in. See, by my nature, I end up doing a lot of work that isn't actually my job because I want to help. I enjoy feeling useful, but they're firing me because they don't want me to sell things or train people like they had told me to do. So for the last 2 weeks of my job, I stopped counting all the money for deposits. That was the manager's job even though she hadn't done it for half a year since making me do it. This meant that she had to come in on days that she didn't work just to do the deposit. I stopped actively recruiting customers, which is what we were supposed to do when you had downtime, and prowl around the attached mall for people who you could convince to get photos. The best tactic was always to find people with new young ones, tell them how beautiful the baby is, and offer a free print for one of those photos after the shoot. Almost no one passes that up because they have a wonderful photo to hold on to. I didn't feel guilty doing it because it genuinely makes people happy. I stopped taking meticulous notes of every interaction that was worth following up on. I used to make a note for every next shift about how X customer seemed interested but was unconvinced, and that a simple reminder of an offer would probably be enough to get them to buy. Or I would make a note about how someone forgot their passport photos and whether or not they had paid already. On my last day, the truest malicious compliance happened. They wanted me gone. Okay, I took my name tag and packed it away. I went into the photo studio and grabbed the kids' toys I had brought in to help get young ones to cooperate. Babies don't really understand a stranger telling them to smile for the camera, but if you shake a rattle at them, they make silly faces. They're very good at smiling for that. I cleared up all the things that I had laid out neatly for easy preparation and put them back in storage. I cleaned up the counter to get rid of all the notes and passport photos that weren't claimed that day, because that's what we were technically supposed to do. And then came the real part that the title refers to. Over my 9 months working there, a number of issues had come up with things that we worked with. For the passport photos, we needed a paper trimmer to slice off the edges quickly and neatly. We had one when I started, but then it broke. I brought in a replacement, then that got broken too. Still, we needed one, so I bought another replacement. We also had gotten our stapler stolen. No worries, I had one at home we could use. And the keys to the storage, where we would find the extra receipt paper, the passport paper, where we keep the deposits, where we keep the other paper files. These were tiny keys, and the color of them was so bland that throughout the course of the day, they were easily getting lost 30 times. I had bought a large blue fluffy keychain to attach it with the permission from the boss. Never lost the keys again. Not one of us. We had also had a sign when I started there which we could pop out which said, "I'm in a photo shoot, please be patient, I'll be with you in a moment." Or something along those lines. Because there was often only one employee at a time, they had to do the photo shoots and all the passport photo drop-ins. Well, my boss accidentally dumped her coffee on that sign after she tripped one day. So I went out of my way and got a new one printed. bought a plastic sleeve for it, and set it up with a cardboard backing so it wouldn't break or get ruined. It was better than the old one. So of course, when I left, I took my sign, my keys, my paper trimmer, my stapler, my toys, and notably, my shutter button. You see, the camera had a shutter button attached that would allow you to move about while snapping photos. Again, helping with little ones because they don't understand directions, so you have to be able to physically draw their attention somewhere. This cord had gotten frayed but not replaced. It shocked me nasty enough to leave a burn, so I took it off the camera and brought my own in. I got a call the next day asking me how dare I steal the company's supplies. I calmly replied that I had just taken back the items that belonged to me, and that they could keep the broken paper trimmer that I had brought in. I even left them a pair of scissors that I had brought for a backup when the paper cutter first broke. I even brought them a box of paper clips for using since they didn't have a stapler anymore. The store closed down 2 months later. Crazy how when you fire your hardest worker over things that you told them to do, or one missed shift, other employees are less than enthused about the chance at the same thing happening to them. And no one else worked nearly as hard to keep everything in black as I did. Not to say that there's anything wrong with that. I liked everyone except the manager since it was only 2 employees and they did their work well and treated me nicely. They just had a better sense of doing what they were paid for and nothing else. And for reference, the employee who the customer felt I was treating badly looked at our manager like she was insane and asked when I had done that because she knew for a fact that the only time I raised my voice at either herself or the only other employee was because it was too loud for them to hear me otherwise. She apologized to me and said that she was worried it was her fault because she had been a little nervous that day because she was dealing with other things and she was worried that the customer had gotten the wrong impression because of that. Said employee went on to have her own gallery show, leaving shortly after I was fired. But anyways, let me know. Am I the jerk? Man, that was a long story, but I've always found it a bit odd when people use their own money to help out a place of employment. I mean, it's a nice thing to do to make your work life easier, but it should come out of the employer's pocket, not yours. I'm glad this OP left this job because working in places with a 3-strike policy that never expires is too stressful for anyone to deal with. Shoe store Karen demands we accept dirty shoes. Gets denied by 3 managers. Long story, but I felt like sharing. I currently work in a shoe department area. This all started with this guy wanting to purchase shoes that I clearly remember just putting out for display. Brand new. I looked down at the shoes and asked him if he was sure he wanted those exact ones because they looked a bit tight on him. I can tell he thought about it for a second before Mother Dearest said something along the lines of, "They're fine. If you like them, go ahead and just get them. They're your usual size, so it doesn't matter. You just buy them. I think they're perfect for you." So of course the guy listened to her and decided he wanted to take them anyways and wear them out. I asked him again, warning him that if he wears them out and damages them, there's no returning them. This time he didn't even think, he just looked at his mom and said it was okay. Alright, whatever. I ring him up and they leave. Skip 2 days later and the same guy comes in wanting to return the shoes that he just bought because they didn't fit him from one side. When I open the box and take a look at them, they were used, like really used. I looked at him and he immediately began claiming that they had been sold to him like that and the reason why they were messed up is because they were on display, not because he used them. The look on his face when I told him I was the one that sold him these shoes was kind of hilarious. I guess he thought I was another employee and I would just fall for this. Of course, I refused due to it being company policy that we never sell messed up shoes, and Mother Karen wasn't happy. All I could do was offer to stretch them a bit, but Mother K refused, calling them defective because her son was the same size in other brands of shoes, yet those didn't fit, and were very uncomfortable. It wouldn't have been a problem to return or exchange them if he hadn't brought them back as if he had just walked a mountain trail. So of course Karen starts making a scene and not allowing anybody to speak, demanding I give her son, the one who she convinced to take the shoes in the first place, back his money. Nope, I say again. So she asked to speak with the manager. I called for one, and when manager number 1 came, she tried to explain to Karen that we couldn't take back the shoes in that state and also offered the stretching. Now she was yelling and arguing with manager number 1 for almost 10 minutes, then demanding to speak with someone else who would actually help her. Manager number 2 is then called and number 1 leaves, too early. Mother Karen turns to me and my coworker yelling at us, calling us names, so we just turn our backs to her like we're instructed to do while waiting for a manager. She begins to forcibly poke my coworker, trying to turn her around before said coworker leaves to help someone else. Unfortunately for me, Mother Karen became worse, getting in my face and getting even closer whenever I would back up. She started yelling and calling me rude, saying that I would do the same if it were my money and how she returns used shoes all the time in all stores, including this one. All while her son sat there waiting and the father scrolling through his phone acting as if nothing was going on. About 5 minutes passed and manager number 2 came and with no surprise told the woman the exact same thing. But this time around, Mother Karen agrees to leave the shoes to stretch before peacefully leaving. I honestly don't know what number 2 told her to get her to calm down. My guess is that she may have implied that we would accept the return when we weren't listening. Skip to another 2 or 3 days and the guy comes back to pick up and try on the shoes. The first thing he does after sitting down is call Mother K, who tells him to speak with another manager, number 3. Who at the end tells him that we can't give him his money back and all we can do is simply stretch them out a bit more. And that there was no arguing with her because she herself was the actual shoe area manager. He grabs his shoes, says thanks, but there was no need because he could do it himself at home. He walks out the doors and has never been seen again. Boy, I hope they never come back. So, I'm not gonna lie, my mom had a little Karen in her when I was younger. I have vivid memories of her asking for a manager and me being very embarrassed. I remember calling her out on this one time and saying, "Why do you have to be like that, Mom?" And she hit me with something along the lines of "you can't let people take advantage of you." So I don't know if something actually happened that day because my mom isn't the type of person to try and get stuff for free, or if she just had a Karen face. Who knows, but I think we can all agree that retail Karens are pretty terrible. I need to take my days off, if you say so. Have I mentioned how much I hate shore posting? For those that haven't seen my previous malicious compliance, I will create a brief background. During my time in the Navy, I was posted to a shore-based workshop with more people than it needed. Micromanagement ensues. So on this given day in the workshop at the morning muster, the chief announces, "Anyone with more than 30 days annual leave needs to start taking leave to get their leave balance down." Me with 75 days at the time, why? "It's a directive from the Chief of Navy." So me being me, I go and look up the books, specifically the Pay and Conditions Manual, aka Pac-Man. Fast forward 3 days, I get called into the chief's office. "Why haven't you put in for leave?" "I don't want to." "Didn't you hear me say it was a directive from the Chief of Navy?" "Yes, but that directive isn't lawful." You could see the chief's blood pressure visibly rising at this point. "What the heck do you mean?" "In accordance with Pac-Man," I quoted the specific reference, "I cannot be compelled to take annual leave," which was followed by him telling me to get out. To be honest, by this stage, I was just seeing how many buttons I could push. In that workshop, we had to make our own entertainment. 2 hours later, I was called up to my divisional officer, DO. The conversation was more or less carbon copy of the conversation I just had with my chief. Perhaps a little less 4-letter Anglo-Saxon verbiage. For the next week, I didn't hear a peep, but I knew this wasn't over. I have planned the next few things I can do and will do depending on how my chain of command proceeds. The next week, one of my petty officers, being from New Zealand originally, we naturally called him Kiwi, came back from leave. We had worked together a few times and had a good rapport as a result, so my chief sent him to try and thwart my evil plans. "Filigrees, daddy, we need a chat." "Hey Kiwi, they sending in the big guns to beat me down now, huh? So you know what this is about?" "Yep. Do you realize they're talking about charging you?" "What's the charge?" "Failure to comply with a lawful general order." "The order isn't lawful. The charge wouldn't stick. Even if it did, what would the punishment be? Stoppage of leave?" "You were just doing this to cause problems, aren't you?" "No, I genuinely don't want to take leave. I can't really afford to go anywhere, so I'd just be spending a week sitting on my butt bored as hell. I can do that here and not lose any of my accrued leave." "Okay, you don't have to take all of your leave at once, just start taking some. It could take the heat off the entire chain of command, and those above might be less inclined to launch you into space without the benefit of a spacesuit." "Okay, Kiwi, I'll think about it." I had actually thought about it. When posted ashore, we accrue approximately 0.8 days of annual leave per fortnight, which works out to be a bit over 1.6 days a month. So a few days later, I put in a leave request through the online system for the first Monday of the next month. My leave dates were Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So A, it looks like I am taking 3 days, but I'm only taking 1, and B, so I couldn't get roasted for duty on that weekend. Leave approved. I enjoy my 3-day weekend. The next month, the same thing. The sharper ones in the crowd see what's happening. My leave balance is still going up, not down, just slower than it was before. After about 3 months, I get asked why I'm not putting anything in the reason for leave section of the online forum. I point to the line on the forum that says quite clearly that the reasons don't need to be provided for annual leave requests. Please just put something in that space. So the next month, reason for leave, mental health day. 2 months after that, then Please don't put that. The next month, reason for leave, they are making me do this, I don't want to. That made them angry. The ear blistering I got for that one is definitely not PG, but the point was made on both sides. From then on, my 1 day off a month was leave management. They were so happy when I got a C posting later that year. I still wonder if they ever realized that I wasn't actually getting my leave balance down. What did I do with my Mondays off? Day drinking. I actually found a venue near the biggest market in the state that had spicy waitresses from 9 a.m. to noon on Mondays. Plus, a few other places had the similar service over lunch and early afternoon. Good times. I've never understood people that don't use their vacation days. I loved using my days, even if it meant me just going home and chilling. I guess everyone is just built different, but any day away from work is a good day in my opinion. But also, I am similar to the OP because I often did things to annoy my bosses when they were trying to install stupid ideas that didn't make sense. At one point, our supervisors told us that we needed to start handwriting titles for each section we printed out on the papers. But that title was already clearly printed on the pages, so it was just double work. So I started writing the title as big as I could in the emptied white space. It was pretty petty, but so is forcing people to do nonsense work. You need me to file safety reports? You got it. As a bit of context to understand the story, I work at a big box retail store. Over the past few months, they've decided to weigh a heavier emphasis on store safety, where to find safety tips, how to do things safely, and also how to file safety reports. There's 2 people on the security and safety team. It was around last month that they really started cracking down on making sure that everyone in the entire store knew how to file safety reports. And the safety guy would spend a decent amount of time going around the store and quizzing people on how to file them, and also how other safety related things go. And as a side note, that will become important later. I am pretty good friends with him. Once I was taught how to do it, my non-malicious compliance began. Normally, working in retail, you do your job perfectly and there's no real need to file any sort of safety report because nothing bad happened. But with my special case, I like to put it as most others can do their jobs perfectly and be safe, but as a cart attendant, I can do my job perfectly and still get run over by a truck. Anyone who has ever worked in retail can confirm how stupid customers can be at times. Now, when you put them behind the wheel of a multi-ton vehicle, things can get very dangerous very quickly if you don't keep your guard up. And so, the safety reports began to pile up from me. Typically, it was about 2 per week. Most of the reports came from having to make a turn or cross through an intersection in the parking lot. I would be stopped waiting for a safe opportunity to continue, a vehicle would come to a stop, I would begin to continue moving carts, and then the car would suddenly start moving and narrowly avoid hitting me or my row of carts. And so I would just file those near-missed accidents. I never really thought much of it. That is until we had a safety huddle for the entire store. The team leader had announced that their quota for safety reports for the whole store was 1 or 2 a week. For me, it hit that in the past 2 weeks for the safety reports, and that's only the ones I made, not accounting for the other employees who were also filing. I was effectively giving the store its quota that it needed. I just thought it was funny and later on that day told the safety guy about it. In our conversation, he told me that I was actually filing so many safety reports that the head of the store actually got mad at him because I was filing so many of them. As he put it, they told me to teach you guys how to file safety reports, and here you are filing legitimate safety reports. I don't know why they're mad. As we later put it, management doesn't quite recognize how dangerous it can be in a parking lot. By this time, I had turned in my 2 weeks notice for separate reasons, but he gave me a new drive. Just the knowledge that I was effectively taking blows at upper management by just doing exactly what they wanted me to do was enough for me to switch from normal compliance to malicious compliance. Because the parking lot is practically my domain, nearly missed accidents are abound for me. In the time since then, I still made about 3 or 4 safety filings. Today was my 3rd to last day that I am scheduled to work at the store. Typical idiot drivers were abound, and I wind up making a safety report an hour into my shift. Other than the fact that maybe some management is infuriated that I'm doing exactly what I should. Again, later on, I noticed the head of security and safety had left their office and was coming in my general direction. Because I was right next to the registers at the time, I thought that something else was going on. Just gave me the typical greeting, but I was surprised when they came towards me and stopped. He said to me, "Hey, if you ever have any more safety filings that deal with vehicles, just come to me or safety guy and report it directly to us." As soon as he left, I felt a sense of victory. My compliance in both malicious and non-malicious forms was too much for management, and they finally buckled under the weight of my safety reports filing. I was almost laughing at the thought. I told a few coworkers about it, and all of them agreed with me that it was hilarious. The guy with the most dangerous job just got asked to stop making safety reports on the most dangerous aspect of their job because they were filing so many. As I said before, I already have my 2 weeks in and I only have 2 more working days to go. So I don't really care that this feels unusual and not right. I'm just happy to move on to a new job. And in case anyone is wondering, yes, I did have to go to the head of safety and security during my shift today because someone almost hit the cart pusher later in my shift. Edit 1. Looks like the reason they don't want me filing is because I filed 10 reports that had to deal with vehicles in a month. And the most they can do is tell me to slow down and pay attention. If you've never worked pushing carts before, you might not know how terrible a parking lot can be. I used to do this in my teen years and man, I had cars almost hit me, people complain about carts hitting their cars, and sketchy people asking you random questions. But my worst experience was Army recruiters. This one time, an Army recruiter pulled up to me while I was pushing carts and said, "Hey man, you ever think about joining the Army?" To which I replied, "Nope, it's not my thing, man. Army has nothing that interests me." I don't think he liked that response, so he said, "You don't want to fight for your country?" Nope. At this point, he points to the passenger in his car, who was a woman in uniform, and says, "So you rather have this woman fight the battle for you?" To which I responded, it was her decision to join the Army. This didn't sit well with the recruiter, and he said, "Well, I think that's a female dog type of move." I just looked at him and told him to F off, and he just drove away. To this day, recruiters still annoy me. Good luck when you end up costing the organization serious revenue loss. I need a vacation. I'm a young brown woman in a company that's mostly older white men. Honestly, it's usually not that big of a deal because we work remote and I usually work with the same group of people. They know me and respect me now that I've earned it. I also work as a cross-functional role, where I lead company strategies specific to the initiatives that reach across the org, and of course, I deal with a lot of people ignoring me and confirming everything I say with my white male boss. My boss is pretty great. He will direct them right back to me and more than likely ignore them until they just come to me on their own. This time, I was working with individuals who were leading another team, who, if it matters, is definitely much more operational resource than myself. He and his team were already assigned by their manager, who also openly questions my age and experience constantly as a joke, to be my resources for the business critical project. However, either willfully or otherwise, are incapable of the smallest tasks and do it carelessly or break our workflows. They won't even Google/Stack Exchange to find the right answer, and honestly, it blows my mind. I've decided it's better to just do it for them and not take credit, because otherwise it would be weeks off track and still incomplete. Every week they have questions that the team lead sends in an email to my boss with me copied that I will answer because it's my freaking initiative. And mind you, I was hired for this role because I'm considered a thought leader in my field. And my boss does not have a clue to be able to answer it even if he wanted to, nor does he care. They will ignore me and do what they want anyways, which I will spend many nights fixing on top of my already 10-hour days. One day I got frustrated and asked, without anyone else on copy, why I was answering if they weren't going to even acknowledge it or change what they were doing. And he says to me with his manager on copy, "Because these questions aren't for you. These are strategy decisions that I need confirmation from, insert my manager's name here." So I said, okay. I brought up the situation with my manager, who said, "Okay, we have to be careful with these fragile egos, as they were in the org for many years and probably didn't enjoy the direction from someone younger and new." He said that you've done your job, let them do theirs now. So I did. I stopped answering questions not directed at me, stopped doing their work for them, and started sending more detailed do's and don'ts to the team. I had my PM, a wonderful woman who was also being ignored, send weekly executive project updates to their manager as well as mine, etc. This report includes cost, impact, and risk. This was about 3 months back. Unbeknownst to the aforementioned team, I had already succeeded as far as my role was concerned. I presented my strategy along with expectations and assumptions, aka the do's and don'ts. I continued to share with the team and they continued to ignore at the end of the first phase of this work. This was almost about 3 months ago, coincidentally when I stopped fixing their mistakes and answering the questions not meant for me. Also, I raised concerns with their manager, who ignored them, with my manager on copy, who also ignored them. But he tends to do that. The only response I got was a joke from the team's manager saying, "I need a vacation." Cut to last week, a critical milestone for the project, the exact week I decided to take my PTO, because he's right, I do need a vacation. And just as I had said it would at this milestone, the entire project came crashing down. The data backups were of course not even saved appropriately, so we couldn't even recover that quickly. I, of course, did keep backups without letting the team know because I'm that petty. The biggest mistake you can make in an org like mine is to disrupt the business continuity, and let's just say business was seriously discontinued, as I said it would be to anyone who would listen, because business continuity disruptions mean big losses. So anyway, I get a series of calls during my week off from my boss, and I didn't even have to explain the situation to him because he was on copy for most of this. I had done everything, including save the day with my backup data backup in case they screwed up. I got showered with praise from my superiors, and I took the opportunity to pitch my boss a new initiative to lead, and of course it was a hit as he was riding a wave of commendations for his department crushing it. I have relatively no clue what happened to the team that was working with me though. Guaranteed not much in the way of actual consequences, but you know, they were under fire and will be for a long time. Edit 1. Wow, thanks guys, your comments and messages were so nice to read. I'm a bit overwhelmed with responding to all of them, though here are a few things that I do want to respond to. I didn't bring race, gender, age into it. It was brought in and clearly not by me. Why would I when it puts me at a significant disadvantage? For the record, I do think I'm a good manager, colleague, and worker. My team and colleagues like me because I'm willing to get in there and work on what needs to be done rather than get on a series of calls to decide what needs to be done and wait for someone else to do it. And my managers like me because I'm honest, realistic, and tell it like it is. The reason this particular team did not want to work or listen to me is because they questioned my qualifications to be giving directions, which, mind you, is my role. But it certainly couldn't be because of my qualifications, because as I mentioned before, I had to prove myself in the industry to get where I am in the company to begin with. There really shouldn't be a question of whether I'm qualified at this point. So if my qualms are in control, what are the variables? The next thing is the thought leader bit. No, I do not speak to my coworkers about it or brag about my thought leadership, but I probably should have been more open about it. I worked hard to get published and speak at conferences. It's what got me this job. I made a lot of sacrifices and pushed myself way out of my comfort zone to make it happen. Regardless, I didn't mention it here to brag, but to demonstrate that I am, in fact, recognized by the industry at large to make these sort of strategic decisions, which was called into question. Why should I hide that? Humility? That's a strange concept when we're literally talking about my qualifications. As someone who has been in a lead position before and has had to deal with people that wouldn't pull their own weight or listen to orders, sometimes the best thing you can do is let them crash and burn. I let this happen one time when my co-lead was falsifying data in our industry, which is extremely bad to do. I got a phone call on my day off that he had got caught, and I never saw him again after that. My boss was getting fired, so he tricked the company into giving his team a year off with pay. Here's a story from a while ago with malicious compliance on the part of my manager. It was just around the year 2000, and I was working in IT. There had been a busy year leading up to the millennium. Now everyone was looking to get back to normal. The company had other plans for us and decided to make a third of the IT staff redundant. In my team of 12, this meant 4 of us. This wasn't really a problem, as even though I had just moved into the IT a few years earlier, the job market was booming and getting a new job would be easy. This HR move had been a bit of a surprise as we were very busy. Lots of routine projects had been put on hold, so lots of catching up. But whatever, they knew best. Redundancy with this company offered a month's salary per year of service, way over a legal minimum. They were offering for me a year's salary tax-free, mostly, to find a better paying job elsewhere. An offer that would be hard to say no to, but unfortunately, they were not going to ask. The way redundancy works for the company in the UK is that all the occupants of the role are ranked by very carefully selected criteria, and the lowest ranked members are gone. The way the criteria are selected are to make them very subjective and capable of withstanding any legal challenge that might lead to an industrial tribunal. If there was one thing HR hated above all, it was legal hassles. Criteria would be things like expected to be able to contribute well in other divisions of the company, or other such evidence-free bollocks. Why this weird approach from HR? It isn't as daft as it may appear. When trying to reduce headcounts, the options in the UK are natural wastage, offering early retirement, offering voluntary redundancy, or having compulsory redundancies. In a team role in IT at the time, what tends to happen is that nobody is old enough to retire, and offering early retirement was actually expensive as it was based off a generous company policy. Offering voluntary redundancy means the deadwood stays. Forcing a selection process stops the good people from leaving, no redundancy money, and allows getting rid of poor performers. Or at least that was the plan. Anyway, my manager had been told that he was being made redundant, which was a bit of a tactical error. He wasn't really adhering to the company line as strictly as he might have had the circumstances been different. He gathered us together and asked who wanted to go. 4 of us, me included, volunteered, so all was good and everyone in the team would be happy. My manager, maliciously complying with the ranking exercise, duly ranked us by the contrived criteria but interpreted to our ends and not the company's. These rankings were passed to HR, processes were run, runes scaped, oracles consulted, and ultimately decisions made. Lo and behold, the gang of the 4 came to the bottom of the pack. Because of the extremely subjective nature of the criteria, nobody could prove the rankings were wrong. My manager then let the team know who was staying and who was going, as was right and proper. And each of us got a bye-bye loser or you're still on the board letter from HR. That wasn't the end of it though. HR somehow figured out they were being stitched up by my manager. Comparing the people leaving with the people with the highest annual appraisal scores was an exact fit. HR went into recovery mode and tried briefly to revoke the redundancies. This would have been totally legal except for one thing. It had been announced that we were the bottom of the selection criteria. Continued employment would have been unthinkable as we were declared the least competent to do the job, and they still wanted to get rid of 1/3. If they had insisted this would have been potential constructive dismissal. Either for the gang of 4, in a weird backwards way. This is when the employer makes life untenable for the employee, such as saying you are rubbish at your job and they want to get rid of you. Or if another 4 were selected, then obviously the process was flawed and they claim unfair dismissal. Considering the entire rigmarole, particularly the selection criteria ruse, was designed to avoid legal hassle, they were painted into a corner and had to let the 4 of us go. So thanks to Dave for playing the system so well to get the outcome the employees and not HR wanted. Epilogue. It was, as expected, easy to get a new job in those halcyon days. I had decided to take 3 months off, but a really attractive role came up and I started 5 weeks later, and have been there ever since. Epilogue 2. Eventually, talking to my friends who stayed, those round of redundancies was, as I sort of expected, the precursor to eventually outsourcing. This was very much in vogue back then. About 2 or 3 years later, the overly slimmed down organization was transferred, called TUP in the UK, Transfer of Undertaking Protection of Employment, to an outsourcer. A bullet dodge there. TUP means that you transfer your current pay and conditions and you will rot with that salary, etc. Until it is worse than your new employer standards, terms, and conditions. No pay raises, bonuses, increased holiday entitlement, nothing. This obviously also ends in another the deadwood stays situation, as everyone who can get another job will as soon as the market moves past them. This seems like a big brain move if I've ever seen one, but at the same time, if I understand correctly, it seems like it's better to be bad at your job than to be good at your job because you get rewarded with paid time off to find a new job? I definitely don't think this would work in America because you just get fired if they want to get rid of you. But yeah, what this OP was able to pull off, I think was pretty awesome. Discipline me for being 22 seconds late without notice? Got it. Won't happen again. This happened several years ago because there was some malicious compliance that lasted for years. My former employer uses a point-based system to track attendance. The parts of this policy relevant to this story are: tardy with call in prior to the shift starts, half a point. Tardy with no call, 1 point. Accumulate enough points and you're fired. There's a set of train tracks crossing the street that leads to the facility. Occasionally, the train will stop while blocking the crossing. If you're caught there in the last few minutes before you're supposed to clock in, you have a decision to make. Wait or go around. Either way, you might be late. Sometimes you'll decide to go around and then the train clears the crossing and the folks who waited got in before you. Sometimes you'll wait and watch through the gaps in the train of the cars that went around pull into the parking lot, while you're still idling waiting for the block train to cross. To be clear, going around involves taking a bunch of secondary country roads as well as a few field access roads. It's an extremely rural area. You will literally never know what kind of road conditions you're going to to find along the way. The roads may be entirely unusable during the winter months when snow covers them. One night during my years on third shift, I was stopped at these tracks and decided to wait. Eventually, the train moved on. I raced into the parking lot, used my key card to zip through the turnstiles, and ran into the punch clock. My clock in time was 10:30 p.m. They had these biometric punch-in clocks that read your fingerprint to clock employees in and out. Sometimes these clocks will just not read your fingerprint. I go to the punch-in clock and it said 10:30. I'm golden. It doesn't track seconds. I enter my employee ID number and place my finger on the sensor. 3 beeps, failed reading. Tried again, 3 beeps. Tried once more, 3 beeps. Nope, not trying again because by this time the clock was likely to tick over to 10:31 in the middle of reading my finger. When I got to my assigned work area, I told my manager what happened. He said, "Don't worry about it, he'll manually punch me in." I should have listened, but I'm a worrier. In the morning when the front office people started showing back up, I went to the attendance office to confirm my situation was all good. The office administrator decided to check my gate time and use that as my determining factor. I scanned my key card at 10:22 p.m. That's a tardy, no call. One full attendance point to be issued. I reiterated that it was a train stopped on the tracks, completely beyond my control. She advised me to either leave earlier or just wait an extra half an hour for my shift to start on the majority of my days. Or else get a cell phone. I didn't have one back then, to call in with from the road next time. Well, what I did instead was started calling in absent, just in case something comes up after I leave home, but before I arrive at work. The first few days, the attendance office up front was just bemused. After weeks, they became annoyed. After months, they apparently complained enough, and I finally got told to stop. During the course of this conversation, they revealed that calling in too early before the start of your shift made it extra challenging to make sure the notice gets to the right member of management, because the message is no longer flagged as new by the time they're creating logs for the next shift. This was great news for me. From then on, every morning before leaving the premises at the end of my shift, I used one of the phones to call in absent for the next shift that evening. They tried to write me up for insubordination, but the labor union slapped it down, pointing out that the collective bargaining agreement specifies the time we must call in by, but does not specify the time before which call-ins may not be made. Cue the huge grin across my face. I never forgot that my team manager tried to do me a solid though. If I was actually going to be late or absent for some reason, I would call the TM's desk line directly to let him know. Even long after I finally got a cell phone, I continued doing this. I would just call in on my way home, instead of sticking around to use their phone after my shift. Found out years and years later from some union reps that upper management never got over this. Drove them nuts that they got beat at their own game for something so simple. It didn't bring the walls crumbling down, but it was a persistent, enduring source of frustration and impotence for them. And really, knowing that you can manage all of that with a 20-second phone call a day, that's the kind of thing that gets you out of bed in the evening. There was an edit to this story. Probably the number one observation I'm seeing is that I should have just sucked it up and left for work earlier. I've commented this a couple of times already, but nobody seems to dig for it. I usually left so early that I got to work before the 20 minutes prior to the start of our shift that we were allowed to clock in. This stop train event was a rare and unpredictable exception, but the crossing was regularly blocked for a few to several minutes by a moving train. Also, not to mention all the other random stuff that could happen on your way to work. I feel this pettiness to my core. I worked for plenty of places that changed their rules about clocking in or being late more than they changed their underwear. At my old job, they said that we could clock in the moment we got on campus, as long as we were ready to work. I was totally fine with that. So I would get to work sometimes 30 minutes early and let dudes on first shift leave early if they wanted. But eventually they changed it to where you couldn't clock in until 5 minutes before your allotted shift time. I didn't feel like changing my routine of getting to work early, so I just chilled in the operator's office. This always led to having management ask me if I could help them with something. But I just said, I can't, I'm not on the clock. To be fair, if it was someone I was cool with, I totally helped. I try not to screw over people I like. But when it was totally some butt kisser employee, I played by the rules of the job. Don't want to fix the elevator? Meet the stinky cart. While I was earning my bachelor's in chemistry, I worked for a university hazmat department. My job involved inspecting labs, disposing of old chemicals, occasionally giving people the "you have to be kidding me" stare, and plenty of other fun activities so our esteemed researchers can figure out science in a safe environment. Quick description of the campus: One building was more recent construction. It was 2 wings and was shaped vaguely like the S-style Tetris block that no one loves. The east wing was full of laboratories, 3 full stories and basement of labs. Cancer research, Alzheimer's research, deadly banana fungus research. The place housed a most prestigious staff of brilliant minds trying to solve the world's problems. The West Wing housed the administration offices of the university. Accountants, bookkeepers, and assorted bean counters, HR and desk jockeys, all the way up to the dean. People who, unlike their Eastern counterparts, seem to be the cause of many baffling questions like, why are the emergency expenditures still not approved? Why is there a problem with my payslip again? And why is there so much red tape? That building was connected to the rest of the campus via underground tunnels, accessed via the basement, and had 1 elevator per wing. Now the thing is that the loading dock is in another building, so when the labs receive their orders of chemicals, they grab their carts and scoot down the tunnel to the arrivals, load up their carts and carry it back to the labs to be safely stored, on penalty of getting the "are you kidding me" stare or a long lecture by my boss. Important point, the rules prohibit using the stairs with hazmat, only elevators, it's the safest way. So one day the science wing's elevator breaks down. I send a request to have it fixed. At least 4 lab employees also send it. We all received the response that we should all use the administrative elevator. I reply that since one of the labs is on sort of a half floor, the only way to reach it is in the science wing elevator or a flight of stairs. I highlighted the risk of falling while carrying heavy boxes of chemicals in the stairs or how there was no way to safely carry very heavy gas containers up these stairs. They were having none of that. Use the administrative wing elevator. They will have to have the elevator fixed, but it's considered low priority. I showed the reply to my boss. He was the type of guy for who workplace safety is no laughing matter. And I was expecting him to reply with a strongly worded email and about 4 or 5 paragraphs from various workplace safety law texts. Instead, he just had this strange smile. Oh, don't worry, Rum. It'll soon be a priority to them. 2 days later, my boss comes in. Rum, don't forget the biohazard truck comes tomorrow. You should collect the waste from the labs. Oh boy, Biohazard Day. The day where I get to leave my office, visit every lab in the university, jokingly say, bring out your dead, as I enter and have chats with teachers, classmates, and various lab aides. I put on my lab coat and protective goggles. And Rum, don't forget, the elevator in the science wing is broken. You have to go through the administrative wing. Oh, now I get it. See, when the pencil pushers decide that fixing the elevator wasn't a priority, they didn't realize that I would be walking around with a cart filled with containers bearing a bright yellow biohazard logo, and returning with them full of old petri dishes full of culture medium. And any biochemist or microbiologist worth their lab coat will tell you, culture medium stinks. It smells like regurgitated baby food left out in the sun. So here I am walking in front of all those nice offices and meeting rooms, the clank 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 of my full cart of biohazards announcing my arrival, and the smell of death following me. Yes, I made sure that all bags were properly sealed, but it's one of those smells that just doesn't care about that. The nice lobby outside the elevator where people wait to meet the dean, hello, sorry about the smell. That nice meeting room with the door open, sorry about the noise, can I get an update on the elevator? People walking down the hall to their office suite. Wow, they do seem a bit nervous seeing a guy in a lab coat driving around containers with biohazard symbols on them. Should I tell them that it's harmless unless they're severely immune compromised? Nah. Oh, and my cart only has room for 3 of those containers, plus the new ones that I leave to replace the full ones. Biohazard Day is about 2 to 4 trips per floor. After the second such biohazard day, we got a message stating that the elevator will be fixed over the weekend. I love the pettiness in this story because I hate when the suits don't think that things that help other departments are a priority. So if they make your life harder, why not make their life uncomfortable? Fair trade-off in my opinion. But let me ask you, who was the jerk in this situation? The suits or the lab geeks? Let me know in the comments. Don't let the VP know we're over budget. This is a bit long, but several years ago I worked in the purchasing department of a large semiconductor company in the US. Mostly I handled all the non-production purchases and contracts like office equipment, building management, travel contracts, that sort of stuff. But my biggest payroll was negotiating and approving temp staffing contracts for our US factories. One day a director, we'll call him Bill, sends me a request for $150,000 for temp workers at a small facility in the middle of nowhere, Florida. The news was that a couple of local businesses had closed and he had this great idea to save the company money by moving some productions down there and snatching up those now desperate workers on the cheap. It seemed like a dumb idea at the time, but it was clearly his pet project, and $150K was within his right to spend without additional approval, so I rubber stamped it and off he went. I hadn't had much interactions with Bill, but he was a pompous butthead, so I was glad to get rid of him. Now, it's important to the story to understand that our company's finances were super tightly controlled. Not a bad thing, but if you wanted to spend $1 over your role's limit, you better have your supervisor's signature in triplicate. Directors like Bill could spend up to $250,000. VPs could spend up to $500,000, and anything over $500,000 had to go all the way to the CEO for approval. About 3 months later, the trouble started when Bill suddenly turned back up asking me for more money. Turns out, rural Florida doesn't have a lot of people with the skills to work in an industrial cleaning room, and the people who do don't come cheap. The money was supposed to last a year and it's already gone, but Bill is certain that he just needs a little more time and asks me to approve another $250,000 without telling our VP, his boss. I straight up refuse since it's literally my job to stop this, but Bill, being God's gift to the company, throws an absolute fit. It got ugly, and long story short, my boss directly ordered me to approve Bill's money without escalating it. I got this all in writing since it was sketchy as hell and absolutely something I could get fired for. Finally, Bill's gone and I don't have to see his mug-short balding head anymore. Or so I thought. Having disrespected the great and powerful Bill, I was now the target of his displeasure. For the next 4 months, I got at least 3 emails or phone calls a day from him or his secretary about something they didn't like about the building. The landscaping, the guy who brings the bottled water, the snack selection in the vending machine, the equipment in the C-level gym, on and on. I'm getting openly berated for the things that have nothing to do with me, but I'm stuck having to deal with them because my boss keeps caving to Bill's whims. And none of my paperwork is getting past his office either. I manage the purchasing for 12 facilities in the US and Europe, but it still needs his signature. I've got to personally bring it to him and stand there while he reviews it or he refuses to sign. It was somewhere between humiliating and infuriating, and I'd increasingly wished that he'd fallen down a staircase. After months of this, finally my chance for malicious compliance arrived. Shockingly, Bill hasn't managed to turn his pet project around, and you know what? Just needs $250,000 to get him through the year. I sign off, add the money to the purchase order, which now totals a cool $650,000, and I shoot off an email to both him and my boss to remind them that this won't be shown to the VP. Then I print out everything, including the direct order not to show it to the VP, and march right over to the CEO's office for him to sign. After all, it was now over the $500,000 required limit, and Bill never asked for the CEO not to see it. All hell broke loose when they realized Bill's little project was $500,000 over budget. He didn't lose his job, but he refused to speak to me after that, which was exactly what I wanted. The Florida project was scrapped and was retasked to making basic electronic components. My boss was initially mad, but once he realized that my insistence on getting Bill's orders in writing probably saved both of our jobs, the whole thing went away. I was there for another year, and thankfully Bill never made an appearance in my office ever again. I'm so glad Bill got screwed here. The only way the story would have gotten better is if Bill would have got fired. But like I've said a million times before, ladies and gentlemen, make that paper trail. The OP did here, and it saved their job. Also, screw Bill and his pet project. My boss sees me get into a car accident, then won't let me return to work without a doctor's note. Here's a flip side malicious compliance, carried out by my manager against myself. Many years ago, I worked at a care home for individuals who needed help learning how to transition into living independently. I loved my job. I loved the people I cared for. It was tough though, as we were always shorthanded. Staff had a high turnover rate because the pay wasn't great. We were constantly working double shifts and getting called in to work on our nights off. I was genuinely open to it as I had no kids at the time, and half of my shift was literally hanging out with some of the coolest clients I've ever met. Cooking dinners with them, watching movies, and after they went to bed, everything was just cleanup. I was allowed to do homework or art or really anything I wanted to within reason. The clients here really liked me and would look forward to when I was coming on shift. They would often come out to the driveway area to greet me when I got in. One day, the manager and several clients were in the driveway waiting for me to arrive. Just as my husband was about to pull into the driveway, residential road, speed limit was about 25 miles an hour, we were hit from behind. The driver was going nearly 70 miles per hour and reached down to get his cell phone and hit us when we were pulling into the driveway. The way he hit us and how fast he was going, our car did a full 360 spin into the driveway and everything in our trunk went flying all over the place. The manager and the client saw everything that happened. We were very lucky that day that they were further back in the driveway and didn't get hit. The manager called an ambulance for us, and I was in complete shock. Felt like the world slowed down to a frame-by-frame slow motion. The ambulance took us both to the hospital. Our car had to be towed away. At the hospital, we were cared for, and I was given an order to stay on bed rest for a few days and see my family physician as soon as possible. Ultimately, I was okay. Major whiplash, I had some body aches, headaches, etc. from the shock and the force of the vehicle's crashing, but nothing severe. My husband wasn't as lucky, but he was okay and just had to use crutches for a while until his knee healed. After a few days of rest, I was still sore and ready to return to work and just move forward. I arrived at work for my shift, and when I entered the house, my manager, the one who saw the crash and called the ambulance, was in the dining room area sitting at the table with paperwork in front of her. She said for me to have a seat so we can go over this paperwork. I sat down and she asked for my doctor's note that put me on bed rest for a few days. Well, I don't have one. I hadn't considered in my state of shock at the time that I needed to ask for one. She had seen firsthand the accident, and she saw me being taken away in the ambulance. So surely there wasn't a question on why I needed to call in for those shifts, right? Wrong. Company policy says if you miss 3 shifts, you must show documentation from a doctor that you were instructed to take those days off or you cannot return to work. Okay, no problem. Sorry, I didn't realize it was needed. I'll run up to the hospital and get it right away. So I head up to the hospital and let them know that I had been seen there a few days ago after a car wreck, and I needed a note that would state that I was seen by a doctor and I was recommended to take a few days of bed rest. The receptionist, who is currently dealing with the triage of patients waiting to be seen, eye rolls and looks up the file. After reading it, she writes a note to my work stating that I was in a wreck and had been seen and was excused from work for 3 days. I promptly returned to work and hand over the note and let her know they pulled the file and got it taken care of. I expected she would just let me fill out the paperwork and go on to my shift. Nope. She says that the note has to be written by a doctor, not a receptionist. Okay, I say. I'll run back and let them know what we need. I head back to the hospital. I let the reception know I was sorry to interrupt again, but I need a note that was written by a doctor. My boss cannot accept it from reception. She says, well, I'm a nurse, but okay, I'll see if I can get it signed by a doctor. Quite some time later, she was able to get it signed by a doctor who would have much rather been spending their time caring for people who got their foot run over by a lawnmower. I thank her and head back to work with the note, once again expecting to move on and get back to my work. Nope. She says, so this is the doctor that you saw the night of the accident? Well, no, of course not. This is an ER, and most of the doctors at this hospital work several different ERs around the valley, and they're rarely available at the same hospital in a given week, more than once or twice. This is a known fact in our area. But they pulled the file, confirmed the information that I was seen and excused from work, and was asked to see a family physician as soon as possible. My boss goes on to say, sorry, but I must have a note from the doctor that saw you in the ER the night of the accident, not some random doctor, and because you can't seem to follow policy, you are now suspended for 3 days. I expect you to have a note from the doctor who you saw before you return to work after your suspension. At this point, I am beside myself. Why in God's name am I being forced to do this and suspended when she saw the car wreck and called the ambulance herself? I am so confused at this point. I was an excellent employee, almost a college graduate with near perfect marks, availability beyond the scope of my own schedule weekly, last minute double shifter for the sake of the company and the clients without even a whine, suffering the effects of malicious compliance far beyond my comprehension. So, what shall I do? I went back to that hospital on the off chance the doctor would be there, and he was not. He wouldn't be for weeks. I spent the next day tracking down this doctor, and in the end, I prevailed. I got my note from the doctor that saw me in the ER on the night of the wreck. I went into work early the next morning before the manager would arrive. I placed the note on her desk front and center, with my keys and another note stating my gratefulness for the opportunity I had to work with these amazing clients, but that unfortunately I could no longer afford the time to work there as I was in a crunch with completing my education. I wished her well and good luck. I continued to visit the clients often as a friend instead of a caregiver, and I'll never forget the awesome times we had hanging out BSing about the world with no doctor's note required to do so. And that malicious compliance that was dished out to me resulted in an ample amount of double shifts for my old manager. Man, I will be 100% honest with you, this is the fastest way to lose great employees. It just makes you feel like your place of business doesn't appreciate or care about what you do or have done. I remember at my old automotive job, I had a lead position that came with no extra pay. I just had extra responsibilities, and I figured, well, if I keep up this good work, do the lead duties, and make the shifts run smoothly, I'm sure I'll get a better raise come evaluation time. When it was finally time to see how much I would get in a raise, I found out that my raise was exactly the same as the worst guy on our shift. I'm talking this guy should have been fired months ago type of bad. The very next day, I told my supervisor that I'm only doing what every other person on the shift does and nothing more. Stuff got really interesting after that, but that's a story for another time. You need to speak with parents before sending kids to my office. So this happened at the height of the TikTok challenge, but the fruition of my malicious compliance has finally reared its beautiful head. So back when soap dispensers the world over were on high alert due to students stealing them, or destroying them in the process, the teachers at my school were directed to monitor the bathrooms. First off, I think this is a disgusting practice, especially when your admin says, you need to go inside that restroom and get them out of there. Freaking gross. We have a security guard for that, and even an SRO, but nope, it's now on us. Add it to the ever-increasing pile of things I never thought I would do as a teacher. The boys' restroom is directly across the hall from my room. Joel Embiid could spread his arms across and touch both doors to my room and the bathroom simultaneously, with his palms. So I hear a sound, a very distinct sound that thanks to TikTok, I've been required to learn to listen out for. The loud snapping of the back of a soap dispenser that someone is trying to pry off the wall. It's very distinct. And I heard it well from my classroom door, just as I was about to prop it open mid-class. I open the restroom door and walk inside while my body holds the door open. I see 3 boys. One is doing a stupid dance while rotating in a circle in place. One is standing on a toilet inside a stall, phone open and recording presumably. And one is staring at the mirror. The first 2 boys see me and change their behavior. One student doesn't seem to see me and reaches forward with his fingers clawed open, prying at the back of the soap dispenser. This happened multiple times in the span of 2 seconds, and it was clear what he was doing. I finally couldn't take how long it's been since I had opened this door and cleared my throat. He looked at me, pretends to have only been washing his hands the whole time, and just stands there. I tell them that they need to move along, and 2 of the boys listen. Dispenser boy decides to make his point of contention saying, "No, I don't think I will." It's at this point that I decide to flake out and report what he's doing to admin. If this was TFIU, this would have been the FU one. I tell EJ, a great security guy who can't be everywhere at once, you know, displacement theory, what's going on, and he gets dispenser boy, dweeb, out of the restroom and sends him to the office. Upon request, I email admin exactly what happened, in about as much painful detail as aforementioned paragraphs would indicate, and this should be it, right? Nope. Dad doesn't believe his precious little dweeb could or would do something like this, and he pressed the issue because dweeb was 100% denying it. Middle school kid denying something? Nah, doesn't sound like a middle schooler. I will say I have the utmost respect for kids and excuse their behavior before adults. Adults should know better. But this began wasting a lot of my time. All of a sudden, I'm now required to sit down alongside administration just to have a makeshift conference call with Dweeb's dad. I already emailed the details, spoke on the phone with admins about this, then in person to confirm it, accompanied by my standing exactly where and how the students stood, and how they attempted to remove the soap dispenser, etc. I had to mime this, because the dad didn't believe this is what his son was doing. So why the flip at my meeting? What's there to discuss? Oh, the father doesn't believe his son would do something like this, and due process and all that. Due process doesn't mean that you get to demand my presence like some sort of unpaid genie. Like I have to perform and reenact the scenario in a convincing enough way so dad will finally believe it? Yet here I was, sitting in the admin's office while she dialed the father's number on speakerphone. Here's what she said. Hi, Mr. Butthead. This is Mrs. Bibbles from Floppy Middle School. I'm here with OP, and he has confirmed that your child was definitely attempting to remove the soap dispenser and not just trying to get soap. I understand how this could be a misunderstanding. She said some more typical admin stuff and then turned to me, her face changing from hard to interpret to very easy to interpret, and said, You really need to start communicating clearly with your parents. I don't want to see any kid in my office until after you've done so. This could have been easy if you had done this. I see your point and see why I needed to be scolded. That's probably what my face said. But deep down, I was shocked. I have no idea how I could have prevented an issue with his parents. I did everything according to protocol, had EJ pull the tape to confirm times, all that jazz. I thought she was going to be apologetic about the situation, saying, I'm sorry, I know that your words mean something, and you saw this firsthand, and I even have a statement from another student that was there, saying that he was trying to take it down. So I shouldn't have called you here on your prep just so Dweeb's dad could talk to you and ask you himself. You know, something like that. I decided right then and there that I was going to have an MC moment, just wasn't sure when. I had forgotten about this for months. Now then all of a sudden I get my opportunity. Good old Dweeb is at it again. This time throwing things at a female student running away from him in the hall, ending with him slapping her on the behind and then groping it. Imagine him making a duck bill with his hand. It was like that. She was not a willing participant in this. Enter malicious compliance. I remember what admin said about sending a very clear email to parents, and to do so before I send a kid to her office. So I have Dweeb wait in the hall rather than send him down. Then asked my colleague to stand in the hallway to monitor so I could stop my class instruction to write an email to a parent. I needed to send an email first, right? Here's the email. Team B, I always use Team B in last name. I was at my propped open classroom door, ready to close it as 7th grade lunch students passed, when I saw Dweeb chasing a female student through the halls, eventually hitting her on the backside. By backside, I mean a very inappropriate location to hit someone. He also used a grabbing, pinching motion to grasp her backside as well. Around this time, Officer Platinum popped his head into my classroom asking, "What's up with this guy?" I told him and he said, "No need to call the office, I'll handle it from here." But I continued my email. I had intended on sending Dweeb to the office, but was instructed to be more clear in my communication. So I wanted to send this email before sending him down. Also, a requirement I've been advised to adhere to after our last communication. Our school resource officer happened to swing by, so it appears that the office visit may not be happening just yet. If there is anything you need, don't hesitate to ask or reply to this email. OP. I lost the train of what happened after this. I immediately returned to teaching after Officer took Dweeb out of my hands. But I know that videotape was used, interviews with other students were used, and Dweeb won't be on campus the rest of the school year. I'm not sure if he officially got arrested, but everybody was talking about how Dweeb left in a cop car. This was an interesting malicious compliance because I feel like it happened towards the student and not necessarily the principal. I really do hope this kid did leave in a cop car though, because I don't see him getting any discipline at home from his father that doesn't think that his kid is capable of doing anything bad. Also, young men need to be taught to respect young women and keep their hands to themselves. Maybe this kid will get a little scared straight treatment. But let me know. Was this OP a jerk for reporting the kid? My company gives me a $0 raise, so I give them my 2 weeks notice while I'm on 2 weeks of vacation. So about a dozen years ago, I was in a great paying job, but the work environment was absolutely atrocious. I spent the entire year I was there looking for another job. Finally, I got an offer elsewhere, at a hefty pay cut, but leapt at it. Now, this place, a very small company, said they were looking for a mid-level software developer. They realized I was a senior developer, but the manager said, "I'm not really sure what to offer as I've never hired a senior developer before." The explanation sounds a little funny, but ultimately it turned out as such. They'd start me at X amount a year, a mid-level developer salary, and at my 1-year review, they'd give me a raise of somewhere between Y and Z depending on how things went, where Z equals 2 times Y, and it would have amounted to somewhere between a 6 to 12% raise. It's just a salary with benefits, no bonuses, but I was fine with that. A little weird that they would try to start new employees with only 1 week of vacation time instead of 2, the way every other place I work does, but they offered me the 2 weeks up front. So I did some work on a legacy program, but they mostly had me working on some completely new feature that integrated with the existing product. A year goes by and I like the place. It's small, but the team is good, and they had me move them to using Eclipse. They were using a text editor, a text editor that had a very convenient compile this source file now feature. Most of the team loved it, and the assistant manager was so delighted with the IDE, I'll give it up when you pry it from my cold dead fingers. So I did a little work on the legacy project. I do a lot of work on the new project, and I work on some customer conversions, converting their data to work on our software when they were on a different software before. I also did refactoring, trying to, actually make use of parent and child classes properly, rather than relying on a massive amount of copy and paste and code duplication that exists there. Me and one of the other guys, call him Z, who was my mentor to the company, but I was his mentor in furthering his programming style, tried to convince the manager to let us set up a source control system. The current system was that everyone worked off a single copy of the source code on a shared network drive, which was backed up to tape every night. The manager resisted. We even suggested to let us take one of the old junk PCs from the storage room and set up a very small repository, just to experiment with and to make sure it worked as we planned, i.e. hello world and program files of that small scale, before trying to move their stuff to it. Manager wouldn't budge. My review is late, several months late, but we were busy, and the manager said it was the most busiest year they could recall them having. Also, I'd scheduled my 2 weeks vacation so that I could fly out to visit my parents. During this time, I've gotten calls about other jobs, but I mostly blew them off. I knew for a fact what my salary would be when I got my review, so I was happy with that. Still, the calls came here and there. My review finally comes and it's almost glowing. 1 or 2 minor hiccups, but overall they were very pleased with me. My raise? $0. Well, I can't really present a raise to the owner since you haven't mastered any piece of the legacy software. I mean, I had you working on new stuff, but there was always time for you to learn the legacy system. There was always time? During their busiest year ever? So busy my review was 5 months late. I grumbled. The 2 guys I worked with the most were jaw-droppingly shocked when I told them. Although one of the older guys there did sort of say words to the effect of, I can't say that this is the first time that's happened. I dug up an old email from before I was hired and forwarded it to them. He took several days to respond. He never takes several days to respond. He came up with some cockamamie word games about how things didn't go that well this year, trying to play the, oh, I meant going well overall, not going well with your performance. So I just kept working away. But I followed up on the most recent call about a potential job. It was the same pay as I was making at this place, but with bonuses and better benefits, and half the distance and time to drive from my house with no tolls. I snuck out to interview at the new place. Seemed to go well and we struck a deal. I gave them a start date of after my vacation. Went back to my current job and played along for a little bit. They also went to the job fairs, looking to hire someone straight out of college. Also, now the manager was interested in source control. One of the other developers said, well, last year it was your idea, but this year it's his idea. Interestingly, I briefly met the one graduating student that they eventually hired. So it comes up to the point where my vacation is about to start. I go down to the CTO's office and give them my 2 weeks notice the day before my leave. He seemed a little thrown by that, and commented something about how they usually expect to have 2 weeks to transition. I said I agree with him, but I pointed out how my manager made certain promises, my review was glowing, and my raise somehow was 0. He didn't quite address that, but made a cryptic sort of comment, X doesn't really share very well. I never knew if they meant my manager doesn't let the rest of them know what he did, or meant that he somehow benefits from keeping costs down. I later was given to understand that the CTO and the owner might as well known or have been in on the plan to stiff me on the raise. I did have time to talk with my manager, of course, and he did say, well, I guess I am the bad guy on this. though he didn't seem particularly remorseful. There was a shocking amount of candor. But we did get what we needed from you. I suspected that the manager's raise was based on how well he did cost controlling though. I mean, I was driving an older vehicle and the manager was driving a newish Acura SUV. But giving my 2 weeks notice on the day before my vacation was my malicious compliance. That I took great relish in. Epilogue. Years later, I was working at another company about 2 miles from that place. A colleague of mine actually told me he was going to interview at that place with the bad manager. He also told me who was interviewing him. It was Z. I told him that Z was a good guy and one of the two that was shocked at my lack of raise. I told my buddy, yeah, Z is a good guy, but ask if X is going to be your manager, because if so, you're not interested. Z actually told my colleague, yeah, OP was great, and while I was his mentor at the company here, I felt more like he was mentoring me. X did screw him, but don't worry, X isn't a part of the picture for this job. Also, that the new person we hired, she says that she can always tell when she runs into OP's code. The code style is so much better. My colleague ultimately didn't take the job with them though. Good for him. It's stuff like this that made me learn not to trust a word upper management says about pay increases in large companies. They often use that to get you to do more work for the whole year and then stiff you when evaluation time comes around. Know your worth at big companies and make sure you stand up for yourself if you feel like you're being used. But word of caution, make sure you're actually an asset to the team. I've had team members think that they deserve raises when they actually deserve to be fired. I stopped 2 thieves from robbing my game store and became a legend. This is my origin story. I found this sub today and I'm rubbing my hands like the customer service villain that I am. I worked in the gaming retail on and off for about 8 years and I have so many stories. My customer service was always ranked in the top 10 in whichever position or district I happened to be working in. And I only say that because I also do not take any nonsense from customers. So my performance was often the only reason why I kept my job after all was said and done. Confirmed by all of the managers and district leaders that I've worked with, there's countless, yes, I am smiling at you, but I am only being nice because I'm paid to. Stories, even more actually female, you're wrong, when I was actually correct stories, but I got a few good gems that I love to share. I worked in over a dozen gaming retail locations across a 50-mile radius, and to be clear, I absolutely loved all the friends I made during this experience. Even with all the threats, SH, stalking, and of course Karens, I'll do it all again. I first worked in a mall, and y'all know that mall security will do absolutely nothing for you unless you hysterically sob or are legitimately threatened with the weapon that someone has in their hands. Or maybe it was just the security at my place that sucked. I don't know. I was often working alone in a very small store and it was slow. Sometimes other mall workers that I had befriended would come over and hang out during their breaks, but otherwise the only people in the store were me and the customers. All of the stores in the area got alerted to a rash of thefts that involved someone distracting one coworker with questions while the other coworker was too busy ringing up the line of customers. Apparently, these fiends did not scope out my store beforehand because there was no other worker. There was no line for my entire shift. It was within an hour of closing, so I pulled out a box from the back room to prepare for the game launch the next day. My store had a locked drawer in the front for them. We did not have the hours to stay more than 30 minutes after closing, so I kinda didn't have a choice to do this other than while the store was open. I was used to this and took every precaution, keeping everything hidden away if a customer came in, not letting the box leave my sight, etc. This box must have looked like the holy grail to this group of thieves because right after I sliced it open, the first one had walked in. He was very charismatic, smiling while he spoke and asked me a bunch of questions and my opinion on things. Another guy walked in a few minutes later and immediately went to the area behind me, where he would have a straight line to the area behind the counter, where my box was. I greeted him as he entered, and I'd like to believe that this is where they both started to hesitate and think, oh God, she must have noticed us. Who knows, but I'm the main character in this story, and I'm gonna say that's what happened because they seemed to be desperate. The first guy suddenly said that he was looking for a specific item for his girlfriend, and surely by pure coincidence, that item was up high in an area that was not near my box. I walked to the back room and kept the door open, 100% line of sight on my box behind the counter still. While I grabbed the ladder to grab this man's item from above, he's on my heels the entire time trying to chat me up, and I'm being polite as I climb the ladder. The moment I turn my head away to look at what I'm reaching for, I hear these hard and heavy footsteps behind me, and honestly, my first thought was that someone was about to attack me. But no, it was guy number 2. I had whipped my head around at the sound, and I saw him with a handful of copies of this unreleased game in his filthy stealing hands. I immediately started screaming, "Are you freaking kidding me? Are you serious? Put that back right now, right now." Pointing at the box, and he does. I'm screeching from atop my high ground on the top of this ladder, so I continue, "Get out of my store." Now pointing at the door, exits guy number 2. All the while, charismatic first guy is politely smiling and seemingly unfazed by the interaction, and as my demon horns sprout from my forehead, I yell, "You too." To which he tries to sputter that he doesn't know him and he wants to buy the thing, and in my increasingly feral voice, I tell him, "I don't give a damn, I'm not stupid, get out." And he proceeds to leave without a word. I alert the local stores that they tried to hit my store. I double check to make sure that all the copies were there. They were. Alert my manager of what happened and go along with closing everything up. My favorite part of this story is that, unbeknownst to me, the security cameras caught absolutely everything, including the audio. I came back a few days later for my next shift and was commended by my team for how I reacted and was told that the entire district had received the video of my very threatening actions as a 5'4" teenager. I was concerned at first because I was a new promotion, but absolutely everyone up top was laughing hysterically. Needless to say, I believe this was my retail origin story. I became known amongst colleagues as the chick who screamed and cursed 2 thieves out of my store with 0 merchandise, alone. This set the tone for the rest of my gaming retail career, and I would not have it any other way. Yo, I can't explain the feeling, but when you stop thieves from stealing stuff, it's one of the best feelings you can experience. I finally understand why Batman does what he does. It's not because his parents died, it's for that feeling. I can't go into crazy detail in this video, but I once worked for a warehouse place where you could buy items in bulk. Well, I worked in the electronics section and I stopped a team of thieves from stealing 5 Samsung TVs. The team had 3 dudes, a woman who pretended to be pregnant, and a grandma. They used the grandma as the decoy and the wannabe pregnant lady as their backup plan for them to escape. I'll have to tell this story sometime in detail, but stopping these criminals felt pretty awesome. Not allowed to use my initiative? Work is canceled then. This happened a few years back, and I got reminded of the guy involved again recently, and it all came flooding back. I had been given a new project at work, which was to install a new type of LED bulb in the train signals in place of the old halogen ones. The guy I was doing the project with, we'll call him P, this guy was universally hated. I had never heard of him before, but I asked what he was like, and the first words out of the mouths of anybody that had any dealings with him were, "He's a jerk," or other C-based words. Honestly, I've never known somebody to not have one person like them at any level of the company. Also, he had no actual authority over me. It was his project and I was the person actually performing/supervising the work. But anything I did under his say-so was done with mere courtesy. If anything, I was actually a grade above him job-wise. However, my boss told me to play nice because I was new to the supervisor role. I was given the spreadsheet of all the signals that needed the bulbs changed and worked out the staff, the materials, and the best course of action to do the work. It was a bad job. You had to change brackets, lamp holders, wiring, and nuts and bolts with tools that weren't fit for the purpose. Usually in the wind or rain and up 20 feet ladders around live electrical equipment. You could isolate some circuits, but usually not all of them in the signal head. Also, I was consistently the last person at work, including my boss's bosses. Dealing with all this poop for no extra thanks, and no chance of extra pay either. I was a salaried worker. After doing the job for a while, I got an email from P saying that he had planned which signals to change for each shift from now on. I was not allowed to stray from this plan. The plan was freaking dumb. Instead of doing signals in a straight line, it was 2 in this area, 2 in this area 5 miles away, 3 here, just terribly put together. I told him that this was stupid as hell and that we needed to do them all in a line, and maybe for the first time in his life, he saw sense and relented. He then made a new plan with all of them in a row, which he said I had to follow. What he failed to realize because he was incompetent was the railway has engineering works in specified areas where other works cannot take place in them for safety reasons. On the very next shift, what he had listed us to do cannot be done. We cannot access the area. If we did, we very much would get fired. So I looked at the spreadsheet, found an area we could work in, and we worked there. This infuriated P. I was told via email to follow his plan to the letter and to stop being so arrogant. Completing a night's work instead of literally doing nothing was arrogant? Okay, fine. Malicious compliance activated. The next couple of nights went okay, but then another specified area showed up that we couldn't work in. This time we just didn't do the work, and I reported back as such because we couldn't deviate from the plan. This happened multiple times a week. Radio silence from P. At some point, P's boss comes out with us to see our work because she hasn't seen this type of work before. And we just so happened to get along great. This was planned in advance. She wasn't keeping an eye on us because we had started to underperform. We get about half of the work done and then start packing up to leave. She asks why. I tell her because the next signals are in an area for planned engineering works and we cannot go in there. She's okay with that. As I said, if we went in there, we would probably be out of a job, or we could be killed. Trains moving, high voltage equipment left on, etc. But she then asks why can't we just go to another location and work there? I show her the plan and tell her how we're supposed to adhere to it at all costs. She asks why, and I ask her if she's seen P's email. She had not and said that she would chase it up during the day. I get a very prickly email from P during the day asking why I only completed half of the work. He had even checked to see what time I had been on the track to tell me I still had 2 hours I could have been working. He CC'd his boss and my boss into the email. He had thought he had me because he was correct. There was 2 hours left before we had to get off track in that section we completed the work in. But the canceled engineering hours in that area for all the other assets made the rest of the work impossible. I was slightly taken aback by this though, because while there was ways to check what time people get off track, nobody ever uses it because it's such an underhanded thing to do and creates massive distrust with everybody. He's the only person in nearly 20 years at this company I've known to have done it. His manager then called us all into a meeting. Before anybody else could speak, she told P that the reason half of the work was done was because the equipment further along on his plan was in a specified area. We are not permitted to work in those areas regardless of what his stupid hindrance of a plan says. She said he should have looked at what areas we could work at before a shift, instead of spending that time spying on the staff for what time they get off track. Her numbers had me working 40% above what was expected for the shift when I was in charge, and less than half of what I should be doing when he was making us follow his plan. P tries to talk back, but she says, and I quote, "Shut your stupid mouth before you say anything else useless." I love this woman. Then I get sent out while she talks to P and my boss in private. The fallout was that the project was getting taken away from P. Him being moved on from that role to never have any position with any kind of authority again. She gave my staff and I a much better project to work on with more overtime, which was voluntary, a better person to liaison with, and the mental image of P looking like a scolded puppy. Man, it's always nice when upper management puts your supervisors in their place. It doesn't happen often, but it's nice when it does. Well, if your supervisor is a bad one at least. I'm not sure why people with power get on these power trips so much when they have a leadership position. When I was a lead, if my employees did their jobs, didn't cause any headaches, and kept their spaces clean, I never bothered them. A happy team can make a workplace so much better. Who's confused? You're confused? I'm confused. What? Every once in a while, I come across someone whose thought process is so different that it's hard to figure out what is going on between what they're thinking and what's actually being said. This customer I talked to recently reminded me of the phrase, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Well, the conversation we had to backpedal a mile and turn down a different route in order to get things accomplished. That, or the very least having to take baby steps through this and having to explain things that normally most people would be able to piece together themselves. In this situation, I was taking phone calls and helping people go through their bills that they have with us and other general questions. The customer initially called to inquire about why she wasn't receiving any of her bills. Simple enough request at the start. The conversation went more like this. After verifying their account details, sales. How can I help you today? Yes, I called because I'm frustrated over the last couple of months. I'm tired of having to check online to just have to see what I owe. Why haven't I been receiving my bills? I check on her account and see what we have been sending to them. Additionally, she has signed up for getting them sent to her email. So I've seen this call 100 times. People forget they signed up for e-billing and call and complain about it. I'd be glad to check up on that for you. And to inquire, you mean you haven't been receiving them in the mail? Yes, of course. What else would I mean? As it stands now, your account is signed up for paperless billing, meaning that it's been opted to have the bills emailed to you. I know what it means. I remember signing up for it. Why do you keep bringing that up? At this point, I'm already over this conversation. However, I know it's possibly far from over. Well, the reason why is because when it's set up this way, that means you will no longer be getting bills sent through the mail. It's sent strictly to your email. That's outrageous. Why can't you send them both ways? Unfortunately, it's more of an either-or situation in regards to this matter. Now, if you wish, she cuts me off at this point. Well, I don't want to have it that way then. Ah, yes, that's what I was about to suggest. I'll go ahead and take care of that for you. All right, good, you best do that. I just want them to come to my house. Now, on the other issue I called you for, I sent in a payment to you recently. I want to make sure you got it. Certainly. Glad that's over. I look into her account in regards to her payment. So on the account, there's nothing past due. However, there is still a bill that's currently owed for X amount of dollars. Is that the payment you're talking about that you sent over to us? Because as of now, we haven't received it to cover the current bill. Wait, there's something still that I owe? Why? How is that? Well, the deadline for this bill isn't for another couple of weeks. However, it is the bill for this month. The payment you're talking about, was it meant to cover this? If so, we haven't received one for this bill yet. When do you recall making the last payment? At this point, I'm trying to see if she made a payment we just haven't received yet, or if something went wrong with the process of it applying to her account. I just made a payment. Why are you saying I still owe something? The last payment we received was on April 20th, and that covered April's bill. However, since another bill came out, that's what's owed. Is there a payment you've made since then? Of course I'd be talking about the payment I sent for April. I only pay my bills at the end of the month. Why the hell would I be talking about a bill for May? It's not due yet. She's getting increasingly angry and having a harsh tone, while I'm wishing I could just hang up at this point. I'm sorry for the confusion. With you wondering why you still owed anything, plus you saying you've been checking your account online, it made me think that you meant you were talking about this bill. Now, she interrupts me again. Why would you assume I meant this bill? I was talking about last month's bill, obviously. Me not deciding to repeat the explanation I just told her and moving on to avoid more arguments, my apologies, and in that case, we did receive the payment to cover last month's bill. Is there anything else I can help you with? I just don't see why you would think that. Anyways, I guess that's all for now. She promptly hangs up on me and I just sit there for a few seconds to calm down my frustration before moving on. I don't know why people are so complicated. I'm sure I've mentioned this before on the Jerk channel, but I've had the displeasure of working at a call center before and it was easily the worst job I've ever had. I was working in the Midwest and we took calls from the East Coast, mostly the New York area. I had so many calls where I wish I could just reach through the phone and shake people for not understanding their bills. Although on the flip side, that job also gave me a glimpse into how people with money live. I had one guy call in who racked up thousands of dollars on his mobile hotspot and I assumed he was about to be upset upon finding out, but all he said was, "Awesome, thanks for letting me know." And he hung up. Must be nice. But let me know, was this OP a jerk or was the customer? Let me know in the comments. A tale from self-checkouts. I posted this in another unrelated thread yesterday and I got the okay to share it here. I've worked in retail for 30 years off and on, and this one, well, you'll see. My fiance works, or worked I should say, as an assistant at the self-checkouts for a market downtown. Yesterday it was busy and there were lines at the registers. So it was two young women's turns at the front of the line to check out. They had a full cart and began scanning their items, slowly. They scanned a few things, changed their minds, asked my fiance to take an item off the order, then they changed their minds again and put it back on. Scanned a few more items and then needed another item taken off. Then they took a break to text. This went on for 20 minutes. He asked them if they needed help. Nope, they were fine, they said. Finally, after all the items were scanned, one went to use Apple Pay and found out her account was low on funds. So the other went to use her Apple Pay and also found out her account was low. They stood there, frozen. My fiance approached them again and asked if he could assist them. One of the women told him that they were working on transferring funds to pay for their items. He asked them if he wanted to suspend the order until they got their account straightened out. They told him that it would just be a minute and they would have it figured out. The lines were still long and getting longer. 10 minutes later, one of them disappeared from the checkout area. The other stood at the register texting someone. My fiance again approached the remaining woman. She said her friend would be right back. 10 minutes later, he looked up. They were both gone. Nowhere in the area, it appeared they had just up and left. Unsurprisingly, this does happen. They had left the cart and all their items at the register. So my guy gathers up their stuff, puts it back in the cart and wheels it out of the way to the liquor counter, cancels the transaction, and lets another customer take their place and keep things moving. Over 10 minutes later, they both came back into the store and demanded to know where their cart went. He told them that it was over by the liquor counter and that he canceled their order because it was now 1 hour since they had walked up to the register to check out. One of the women was furious. She said that they only went to her car to charge her phone for 20 minutes and he should have known that she would be back. She started yelling and throwing a tantrum. Then my fiance went off on them. He made it clear to them that they were being incredibly self-centered and had been holding up other customers for a full hour, that they should have figured out their payment method and that they should have charged their phones ahead of time. He told them that if they knew that they were going to hold people up, they should have just suspended their order, got themselves together, and came back to complete the transaction after they resolved the situation. He then sent them to the back of the line to start over, and they did. No freaks given. That's how he is sometimes. No joking, 3 people waiting in line clapped. One high-fived him. This was the tipping point. He's done there, not going back. He already has other work lined up anyways. I think I would have clapped too for this worker because I can't stand people that hold up lines at stores. I understand issues with registers and stuff, but when you are the reason for the holdup, that is a different story. As a former cashier, these were definitely the worst types of customers, but I won't lie. It was always funny to clap back at them when they got crazy. Facebook Karen thinks she's getting revenge, ends up paying double. I run a repair shop where I employ a bunch of local kids, ages 16 plus, to learn skills and make some money while we genuinely sit around and talk about the world while we fix things. We had a client come in with a busted electronic. We fixed it up for her and gave her a decent discount on the work. Her final bill for the parts and 4 hours of labor was $100 even, discounted down from $220. She didn't like the bill, she didn't like the work, she claimed that we had broken something else. She claimed that the kid who did the work didn't know what she was doing. She did, and I had supervised her. And that the kid who helped her in the front room was rude to her. He wasn't, but she didn't like the little pride flag pin he was wearing. She demanded to see the manager, so I popped out, listened to her tear into my kids, validated how she was feeling, but pointed out that the work she had asked for was done correctly, and her bill was due on pickup of the piece. The last straw came for her when she pulled out a credit card and I had informed her that we don't accept that particular card. She literally asked, "Do you know who I am?" Which I didn't, still don't, and don't care, and I told her that we'd take a personal check. She wrote out a check, problem solved, and got a note from my bank that one had bounced. It was her check, of course. I called her the next day to inform her that her check had been returned for insufficient funds, and that she needed to come in and pay her bill, plus the extra fee for the return check. All of these fees, just to point this out, were clearly outlined on the service agreement she had signed and that we already discounted her $120 just to be nice. She rolled up into the office carrying a bag, and I knew exactly what was going on. She drops, of course, a bag of pennies on the front desk. She's breathing heavily. We're on the second floor and she's taken the stairs. She announces triumphantly that she's here to pay her bill. She just needs to go get the rest of our hard-earned money, she said with a sneer, of course. The kid at the front desk looks at me about to cry, so I stopped working on the thing I'm working on and take over. "How many more bags do you have?" I asked her. She says that the nice people at the bank loaded them up for her. She didn't count them. I told her that it was fine, we'd wait for her to bring them all up and then settle her bill. She was expecting a bigger reaction. I think either that or she hadn't thought this through. 10,000 pennies plus the extra $25 weighs a lot, and she just committed to carrying them through a parking lot and up a flight of stairs. One of my kids, bless his heart, offered to help her carry them. She refused. Finally, shaking and sweating, she deposited the last bags on the countertop. The pennies were loose, not in coin rolls. She's done some work to prove her point. What she didn't count on was that we needed to count out the pennies. While the other kids took care of the clients and fixed things in the back, the front desk guy and I counted up our pennies. She started to realize that this was going to take a while and tried to leave. I told her that she couldn't leave until we've signed off on her bill, since at this point she was already in violation of her service agreement and had already passed a bad check. We couldn't just take her word for it. And I would inform our local constable if she was to leave without paying. I was kinda talking out of my bum, but she managed to tick me off a little. The other clients in the shop came and went and we counted. The phone calls came in and were handled by my kids, and we counted. She sat down in a chair, folding steel and not super comfortable, stood up again, walked around the office, and we counted. After a while, she said, "Just forget it," and took out $125 in bills. We signed off on her agreement and she started to leave. Another one of my kids, bless his heart, asked if she wanted help carrying the pennies back to her car. She looked at all of us with the face of sheer panic, mumbled, "No thank you, just keep them," and bolted. The whole shop was silent for a moment. Then one of the kids started giggling, and nobody could stop. People that were coming in thought we'd gone nuts, but I finally had to banish everybody to the back room until they could breathe again. We loaded the bags into my vehicle, we used the elevator she walked by a few times, took them to the bank and used the coin machine to deposit them. Then we wrote out a donation to our local shelter for the amount she dropped off. She posted something nasty on Facebook about it and got ratioed. She had, of course, posted earlier about what she was going to do, and she got called out on her own post. My favorite response was something like, "You said you were going to pay your bills in pennies. You paid your bills in pennies. What went wrong?" Please don't pay your bills in pennies, folks, especially if you're just doing it to be a jerk. This story was awesome. I love the instant karma the lady got from thinking that she was getting her revenge. I won't lie, I didn't do this to a business because I do think that is a horrible move, but I did do this to a friend one time. Let's just say it was a fantasy football payout. He was talking a lot of BS and was demanding his money. So I paid him in a box of quarters from the bank. He did say what the freak when I gave it to him, but he also laughed out loud. So it was a good time. I automated my useless boss out of her job. This happened a few years ago. I was a data and reporting analyst and did all the ad HOC reports for the company. My boss, we'll call her Carrie, was useless. She was one of these people that was always late, left early, and took days off on short notice. The only thing of value that she did was all the regular reports, sales, revenue, etc. We suspected that she got away with it because she was having an affair with her boss. We'll call him Stuart. Our CEO was a fairly decent bloke. He would look for ways to cut costs. He would pay regular bonuses for the best cost-saving initiatives. Carrie was very keen to submit ideas and encourage us all to automate our tasks, so she could try and take credit for the savings. On one of her skeeve days, which coincidentally Stuart was sick as well, the CEO was desperate for the sales reports from my boss. I'll give it a look and see if I can get it done. Normally, she would spend 2 to 3 days doing it each week, but the CEO wanted it that afternoon. A quick inspection of the data showed it could quite easily be automated, so I knocked up the necessary script and got it over to the CEO, who was super impressed, not only that I had got it done in a couple of hours, but also that it could be updated whenever he needed it. He also asked if I could look at the revenue, churn, and a couple of other reports. Over that afternoon, I automated everything my boss did. Both Carrie and Stuart were back the next day, but were immediately summoned to the CEO's office before being suspended and sent home. Turns out that the CEO knew that they were having an affair, and all the times that they were sick, late, or had to leave early was so that they could sneak off and hook up. He hadn't done anything about it because he knew how important the reports were. Now that they were automated, he was able to get them suspended and later fired for gross misconduct for all the time they had taken off. Also, I got a really nice bonus out of it. I love this story. If you've ever been around a workplace affair, you know how obvious they are and always question how management doesn't know or why they haven't done anything. But with stories like this, now you can see why management lets certain things happen. I didn't say you were lying, sir. I said you were mistaken. This happened a few days ago. I wanted to post it the day of, but wasn't feeling well. Anyways, quick preface. The box store I work for has a new process of applying veteran discounts. For those of you who haven't heard, all veterans with smartphones who want their discounts must register their status either on the company website or the app. It requires their names, branch they served in, discharge date, and birthday. When it's done, they get a QR code that gets scanned to apply the discount. The code can't be screenshot as it refreshes randomly every hour, so it can't be shared. Some of us take the time to help the less tech-savvy folks get situated. Trust me, we don't like it either, but we need our jobs more than we need to appease everyone. Thankfully, I've had many appreciative people express their thanks to me for being patient enough to guide them and make it simple. I get the occasional butt head here and there, but I tell them the polite version of, if you don't want to do it, either pay full price or buy it elsewhere. There is no third option. We used to just visually check IDs to make sure everything was valid, but let's just say too many people ruined it for everyone. Namely, certain folks using veteran discounts for their own companies or companies they worked for, which is not allowed as the discount is only for veterans' personal purchases. Some even got hostile when we told them that they can't combine their veteran discount with their rewards account discounts as they're not combinable. In the 2 years I've been at this job, I've seen 2 men get arrested because they got violent with my staff. One almost punched a manager until our secret security guy, who was trying to get him to leave, grabbed him from behind. I never thought hearing a grown man scream from his arm being twisted could be so glorious. Moving on, our competitor, the other box store, gives veteran discounts when the customers show their ID and give their phone numbers. That's going to change soon as the company will also be going to the new method to keep everyone honest. We got plenty of people who scoff at our new veteran discount policy and threaten us by saying that they're going to the other box store instead. My coworkers and I low-key laugh, because that's like telling us there's free food in the break room. One less rude person to deal with, we say. All caught up? Cool. So, I was watching self-checkout and went to help an elderly woman buy spray paint. It's an age-restricted item. She was very nice and chatted a bit while I scanned her items for her. I didn't have to, but I just wanted to be polite. Then a heavy-set guy waves me over for help. I excuse myself and tell her to have a great day. I asked the guy how I can help him. He says he wanted to apply his veteran discount, but was having trouble. So I asked what I ask everyone. Have you registered your veteran discount on our site? What? I have my ID right here. He shows it to me. My number is blah blah blah. I explained how the policy changed and what we had to do, but he interrupted me. No, I don't have to do that. Just type in my number like last time. We don't go by the numbers, sir. Other box store does. I can help you register. I didn't have to do that last time. Just do your thing, put my phone number in, and give me my discount. I do it all the time when I come here, so why won't you do it? I swapped my friendly tone for my lukewarm neutral tone. You're mistaken, sir. We've never gone by phone number. We used to check IDs, but then... The freak? You calling me a liar? What the freak is your problem? Me, who is unfazed since there's not a problem here. I didn't say you were lying, sir. I said that you were mistaken. As I said, other box store goes by number. We go by the QR code you get when you register your veteran status online. At this point, Big Guy is raising a stink, using every cuss word imaginable, insulting me, whatever. I already shut off my humanity at this point and just stood there watching this angry ape of a man turn an interesting beet red color. When he was done banging his vocal cords, I said in a slightly kinder voice, I'll get a manager for you. You suck at your job. I bet you don't even know who your manager is. Side note, I've worked a good while at this company, and I love making goodies for my coworkers once in a while to show my appreciation for them. Because of those two things, not only do I know who my manager is, everyone who works in this store knows me. Hard to forget the one nice coworker who brings everyone homemade treats just because. It took no time for a manager to show up since one of the cashiers already called. Manager shows up and asks what's up. Big Guy goes ape mode again, calling me all sorts of rather discolored things, including a liar when I tried to explain the veteran discount thing. Manager tells him that I was correct and that we have never given veteran discounts through phone numbers and that the other store did. Big Guy wasn't having it and dug his heels in deep. I was surprised he didn't fall over. 3 male customers at the other checkout defended me, saying I wasn't rude at all, and the shorter one said he was amazed I stood there and, in his words, took it like a boss while this hulk of a witch roared at me. Not gonna lie, that made me laugh. Big Guy kept calling me a liar. Again, shorter male customer told him, Hombre, she said you were mistaken. That doesn't mean lying. You're the only one making up all the BS right now. We all heard you. The elderly woman I helped blew my mind when she said, "You're a butthole for bullying retail workers. They have it hard enough. This girl was nothing less than nice and you pooped all over her kindness. Shame on you." Hearing an old woman cuss will never not be hilarious. Kinda warmed my heart to see strangers sticking up for me. The manager told the customers he didn't appreciate Big Guy harassing his employee and told him to leave. The cherry on top of this whole thing? Big Guy said he could prove that I was lying about the phone number bit. This guy actually pulled out a receipt dated the day before from the last time he shopped here, and lo and behold, the receipt was from the other box store. Big Guy went silent. The manager turned to see the receipt and then to the guy. All the manager said, "So are you gonna leave voluntarily or should I have the police give you a ride somewhere?" With that, Big Guy hurried out empty-handed without a word or glance at anyone. The manager asked if I was okay. I was, just a bit annoyed. He said he appreciated me keeping my cool with him and gave me a fist bump. He also said thanks for the cupcakes I made on Mother's Day since he gave one to his pregnant wife. She said she loved it. I thanked the 3 customers who came to my defense. The shorter one gave me a fist bump and said he knew what it was like to be bullied on the job and how he had a younger daughter who dealt with this kind of stuff at her job. Goes to show you that not all heroes wear capes. Some wear paint-stained clothes, safety vest, or thick boots. And others wear orthopedic loafers and pearl earrings. Shout out to this chick for keeping her cool. I feel like women get talked down to way more at retail stores because people feel like they won't stand up for themselves. I just think they are built different when it comes to dealing with horrible people. They probably have their whole lives. I've kept my cool around terrible customers before, but if someone told me I sucked at my job, it would have been met with a quick description of something they could have done involving the same word. If you catch my drift. This random customer started following me around. So this happened probably a little over a month ago, but I'm finally getting around to telling it. Few things to note. I work at a very popular retail chain, and our store is in a high theft area, so we deal with strange customers all the time. I also wear a sterling silver chain while I work. This will be relevant to the story. First off, I'm not a manager, but I've worked for the company for almost 2 years now, and I'm a very fast learner. So I have a radio on me all the time, and I'm often asked to go deal with rude customers, as I can be trusted to handle it. Someone from our electronics department calls over the radio that they need help dealing with an unruly customer, so I head over to see what I can do. It's just a dispute about pricing on an item, so I go ahead and take care of the customer and apologize for the inconvenience. The subject of this story is not the customer I'm helping, but the guy standing 5 feet away from me just staring while I'm helping them. The guy is giving me some kind of strange look. I don't think much of it and I finish my job and go about my day. As I'm heading to the front, I can see out of the corner of my eye that this guy appears to be following me. I don't think much of it, and I just walk really fast anyway, so I just keep walking and try to ignore him. I look back again, and this guy is literally like crouch running after me, trying to hide behind clothing racks in the apparel department, but he can very obviously be seen. Finally, he emerges and I hear, "Excuse me, man," from behind me. I ignore it at first until he goes, "Yo!" I then stop and spin around with as much effort as I can and say, "How can I help you?" He looks at me for a second, and then this is how the conversation went. "Where'd you get that chain?" "Oh, you like it? My friend gave it to me back home from another state." "Are you sure you didn't get it from a female?" "Oh God. Yeah, man, I'm pretty sure unless her name was a male name." Proceeds to awkward laugh. The guy blankly stared at me for a moment. "Are you sure your friend isn't a big booty babe from Florida?" At this point, I'm literally trying extremely hard not to laugh, and we continue to go back and forth like this for a whole extra minute before he just goes quiet and stands there. I have no idea what else to do, so I just walk away from him. I was a little scared at this point, so I go and tell my manager just in case. Now, when he stopped me, I was heading to break. So after telling my manager, I go to head outside for my break. Right as I'm about to walk out the door while looking at my phone like a stupid person, the security guard who saw the whole thing yells my name. So I stop and I'm like, "What's up, man?" He just quietly nods towards the door and I look over and the customer is just standing right next to the outer doors, as if he's waiting for me to go outside. I ended up having to be escorted out a different door by security to enjoy my break. They say he came back in later that night, but I never saw the guy again. I don't know what his deal was, but it was the first time I was actually pretty freaked out by a customer. I can vouch that you meet a lot of interesting characters while working retail, but I don't think any are worse than when you meet someone you went to school with. Here's an example. One day when I was working my retail job, this dude I had film class with showed up at my job. He was kind of the weird kid in school, a bit awkward, but you still could have a conversation with him if you wanted to. Well, this happened about 4 to 6 years after high school, and this dude shows up, so of course, I ask him what he's been up to. He begins to tell me that he's gotten into these spiritual rocks that have awakened his power to time travel. As you might imagine, I'm stunned, but I don't like to go out of my way to be rude to people, so I try to humor them sometimes, which leads me to ask questions about these time-traveling rocks. He then goes on to tell me a bunch of stuff about these rocks. I can only compare it to what a lot of women sound like when they speak about astrology. I'm pretty sure I made a stupid joke about him giving me the lotto numbers next time he does it, but then he says that he's only done it once and it was to the past. After he left, I'm pretty sure I turned to the corner of the store with no customers and just said, "What the hell just happened?" Then I went about my day. Like I've said a million times, retail stores will give you stories to tell for years. I don't think you understand me. I've already paid for the warranty. Sir, that's sales tax. So I work at a certain game store that recently had a stock thing happen. My position is somewhat equivalent to what a shift lead would be at other stores, but we call it something kind of stupid. In essence, I am the lowest form of management that you can get in store. I can open and close the store by myself. I can make calls without needing permission, but my power only extends to a certain point. Another thing of note is that I just moved to my state less than a month ago, but I've been working with this company long enough to have a decent idea of what I'm doing. With a little bit of variance because I'm in a whole new store, district, and region. Unfortunately, I'm at a new store and there's pretty much only 3 of us. There's a manager who only runs the store temporarily. She basically does what I do but can order supplies and make schedules. And one other person of my own status. A week or 2 ago, I'm in the store with my coworker, Benny. I work at a slow store, so we're goofing around as we're processing our shipments behind the counter, and the phone rings. After a quick argument of who answers, I take the phone. "Thank you for calling Game Store at area of town, where you can still order unreleased game. This is OP speaking. Hi, I bought an Xbox Series X bundle at your store not too long ago. Why does it say customer decline warranty coverage when I asked for the warranty?" "Oh no, we must have rung it up wrong. If you come into the store, I can..." "Well, I drove an hour and a half to get this. I won't do that again, but I paid for the warranty." Me, confused. "Sir, if your receipt says customer decline warranty coverage, then you didn't pay for the warranty." "But I did. The bundle price was $650 and I paid $689.70. Me, still confused. "Hold on for a second. I haven't been at this location long, so let me ask one of my coworkers about this." So I turn and relay the problem to Benny, who frowns and goes to the register. "I don't know what he's talking about. That's the price of the bundle after taxes." I nod a little because that sounds about right. He scans the bundle and the details come up. Sure enough, $689.70. And sure enough, the bundle is $689.70. "Okay, so it looks like you didn't get the warranty by what your receipt says. If you come in, I can go ahead and..." "But I paid for it." "No, sir. The warranty would have been an additional $50 to the bundle price. But I can..." "The bundle price was $650. I paid $689.70. "Right, but that was the sales tax. On a purchase that size, I would expect it to be almost $50 in sales tax. Then why didn't that cover the $50 warranty? I paid extra money. Do you have a manager I can speak to?" "I am the manager on duty, but I'd like to try to get this resolved. What was the name on the receipt?" "Benny, I remember him too. I spent a long time talking to him." "Great, he's here today. Let me talk to him and see what I come up with." So I don't mute this time and I ask Benny about this guy. I get "I don't know, man, we just had like 10 of those things that week. I don't remember everyone that came through for one. That was like 2 weeks ago." Which is fair enough, we do see quite a few people, and some will drive from quite far away if they want something. I nod a little and go back to the phone. "Okay, sir, we can get you set up with a warranty, but since you declined it at the time of purchase..." "No. I spent a long time talking to Benny, and he convinced me of it, so I wanted it." "Right, and that's on us. So what I can do for you is, if you come in with just the receipt, I can do a return and resell you the bundle with the warranty attached for $50. I'm confirming this with Benny too. He nods and says that sounds reasonable and that maybe he remembers the guy. Benny, off to the side, "I think I remember talking to someone for a while, but that guy definitely told me no warranty." "You know what? You said you were supposed to be a manager, and you've had someone else talking to you. I don't have time for this." Click. I'm at the phone and he hung up. Okay. He calls back a few minutes later and I don't answer the phone. I don't want to talk with this guy again. It rings again a few minutes after that and I hand it to Benny. I don't want to deal with this stuff, I huff. Benny proceeds to have a similar conversation, with the added personal touch of the customer trying to make Benny feel guilty that he doesn't remember him. The "I paid for the warranty" and the "then what's this extra money" comes up again, and apparently he just isn't understanding that $48 is 6% tax on a $650 purchase. He gets mad that Benny doesn't remember him and hangs up. So we just go on with processing our shipment and the phone rings. I groan, but this time instead of customer's name, it says Game Store 000. It should be a store number, but they are not. This call is from somebody at corporate. I didn't know this at the time. "Hi, Game Store, this is Game Store, what can I do for you?" "Hi, this is Jake from Game Store Customer Care. I had a call from a gentleman about an Xbox bundle. What can you tell me about that?" So I go on to explain what I understood. This person cannot grasp the concept of sales tax and thinks that because he paid an extra $48 in sales tax, that he's entitled to the $50 warranty because he paid for it, which is still in fact not how that works. Sales tax is sales tax. The government always gets their cut. Jake asked me about what I wanted to do to solve this. I told him if the customer brings in his receipt, I will do a return on the bundle and resell it all exactly as is, but with the warranty attached. He would just have to pay the $50 difference to actually purchase the warranty. Jake agrees that this is, in fact, reasonable and lets me know he will convey very clearly to the customer what I said. After this, of course, I have to play phone tag with my temporary manager and my district manager in case this guy kept trying to go over our heads with this. But he never came into the store for his warranty. It blows my mind that some people don't understand the idea of sales tax being added on. But at the same time, people do come from all parts of the world where tax is included on the price tag. Which, if I'm being honest, that is a much better way to showcase things in my opinion. You would eliminate a bunch of headaches at the register of people saying they don't have enough money to pay. But hey, that's just my opinion.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.